Yeah, just doing live.
Okay. I mean, well, I'm assuming you have like a generic intro to your show, but
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Let me welcome in everyone. How's it going? Thank you for coming in. All right, we're going to do our weekly panel discussion with Prime and Corey. Thank you for coming and joining us as always, guys. We got some interesting topics to discuss this week about the mental health cuts and then reinstatements, the effects on the insanity with Trump and the uh, college rankings, and kind of just like a weekly wrap of politics in general. Hi, Helen. So I guess starting off, Corey, we wanted to talk about the college rankings and how it's impacting the academia as a whole.
Yeah, so there was this New York Times article that came across my feed as I was scrolling, well, the New York Times page, which I'm a subscriber to. And yeah, there was this article pretty much showing that, or rather, well, as you know, maybe probably even better than I do in terms of universities, are ranked in terms of like global reputation. But there's also other metrics in terms of research output and all that stuff. And like they're pretty much showing the rise of universities largely in China. Although the United, I believe, it explicitly says in the title of the article that Harvard maintains the overall number one position in sort of the top 10 in terms of like research output and research quality. But then like pretty much like the rest from like 2 to 10 or like pretty much as of now, the list is becoming more and more dominated by Chinese universities. And it seems like, at least based off of the projections, it's just seems to be maybe only a matter of time before pretty much all the top universities or pretty much all the Chinese universities take the top places in all of these rankings, both in terms of like potentially reputation, research output, and China understandably gets a reputation in terms of, let's say, they output a lot of research, but then maybe that quality isn't so great. But then, in fact, and there is, let's say, questions about, or rather, there are justifiable concerns about, the quality of Chinese research, since there's, you can track in terms of number of retractions. But even then, there, the quality overall is assessed as, still quite high, despite all of the retractions and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And like it seems like China is investing more and more research into the universities, with more or less the intention to overtake the United States. At least that seems to be the overall impression, which I would say,
So how do they judge? Like, how's the rankings and put out more research? Is it literally like more papers? Is it like a hard quantitative number rather than like some sort of qualitative like evaluation?
Yeah, as in there are a number of databases. So the one that they cite in the article is Web of Science, which I'm sure Dr. Gray probably knows about it more than I do. Yeah, but pretty much like essentially a repository for research papers that pretty much the vast majority of papers that will be published will be uploaded essentially to this repository. And then they pretty much just go by the numbers in terms of like, well, pretty much the origination of this research is, from China. So then, China gets the credit of like this paper is coming out of a Chinese university. And they show that the numbers based off of that in terms of the papers uploaded to that repository, Web of Science, pretty much China is number one. Number one, I believe, as of like last year, as in the output was greater.
Yeah, Web of Science is different than Google Scholar in that it's human curated repository like of data. So like Google Scholar will basically crawl the entire internet for anything, from PDFs to dissertations to anything like that. Versus Web of Science is like personally human curated, like to see if it's actually like legit and a real publication. So that's like for if you have access to Claravite or however you pronounce it, that's like the one that everyone uses. So that's I'm saying that would be the one to measure if you were going to do that.
Do they? So you're saying human curated? Do they exclude known research paper mills? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
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 the paper mill is pretty much sham papers.
exactly. Yeah, exactly right, Prime.
Okay.
And they also know pretty much not only the rise of Chinese universities, but also the fall of other, let's say, Ivy League or Ivy League adjacent universities, I guess, or what are considered, top schools in the United States. Of like they cite of pretty much the paragraph here in terms of they say 6 prominent American schools that would have been in the top 10 in the first decade of the 2000s, and they cite the University of Michigan, the University of California, Los Angeles, Johns Hopkins, the University of Washington, Seattle, the University of Pennsylvania, and Stanford University are producing more research than they did 2 decades ago, according to them. But even then, even though the research output has increased from these universities, they're not keeping pace with the Chinese universities, as in they say right after that. But production by the Chinese schools has risen far more.
Yeah, I mean that checks with my personal research background. Like I worked at a nanotechnology lab for my PhD work, and notoriously that's like a field that China sends a lot of like people that just graduate with their PhDs over so that they could kind of like learn, the greatest new and latest, and then kind of like take professors back and then create new schools and stuff off of that. So we would be looking at a lot of like Chinese publications because they're very voluminous, and it's just basically it's very hard to repeat them. Very notoriously like very very hard to repeat, and you'll see something and be like okay, versus like and something that's like an Ivy League for reproducibility, you're kind of like saying like, okay, there's a really good chance that I could reproduce this. I'm going to like put a lot of time and money in reagents and experiments and labor, versus like if you see, one publication from a Chinese lab, you're like, we're going to wait until the second one reproduces it. We're not going to just like sink a bunch of time in it. But dude, there's so many publications. The Chinese postdocs, so people that had gotten their PhDs in China, came over for did their postdoc here, which is their post PhD research in academia. They went back, and within like the year, they had already published like 3 or 4 times. It was wild, man. They were just pumping out publications constantly. It was I mean, as an author, like it's impressive, but also you're kind of like, how many of those are legitimately big enough in order to publish? They might be really really small stepping stones, and they kind of just push it out anyway just to get the publication. So it's tough, man. I mean, it's tough. It's interesting for like science wise, but then also technology wise and patents wise. They're kind of like staking those claims and making other people less weird. You're less likely to go into that research area if you already know that there's a team in China that's working on it. Basically, they're staking their claims in a lot of different areas.
Yeah, and I believe if I have my numbers correct, I believe already China has like pretty much overtaken the United States in terms of number of patents that they just put out
for sure.
Each year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm just listening to you guys and trying to draw some conclusions here. And to be clear, like, and I get like a lot of shit for this. I can assure you, but like I'm not as xenophobic, anti-Chinese as a lot of people here. I mean, I have big problems with the CCP, like huge problems. But to be very clear about that. But I tend to be more forgiving about like what China gets up to, and like more skeptical of the hate they get. However, looking at this, it just seems like this is a thing that China would do for like prestige. I could see pressure being put on these universities to produce, right? Like we need more papers out, right? As part of, an effort to show China's strength and China's dominance, we are going to outperform American universities. And like when I'm hearing from like what you guys are saying, right? Like, hey, this individual, this Chinese graduate, leaves our our labs and goes back to their country, which is perfectly fine, and starts doing work there. And all of a sudden, you get a massive amount of output, right? That just like outpaces like even like what from what your perspective is a productive member of the community, right? Like it just like all of a sudden we're just getting paper after paper dropped, right? Like why is that happening? Like what incentives are pushing them to do this, especially since it's happening on a consistent and wide scale? That must mean there must be some sort of incentive system there.
Yeah, it's huge.
Now,
so the postdoc for this point, like I can speak to that directly. I talked to that person I was talking to, and I was like, bro, because these people are awesome. They're world experts, and obviously I'm American, so I'm like, dude, you should stay here. It's amazing here. And they're like, dude, why would I stay here in the United States? I go back to China. They give me a free apartment. They give me a free car. They give me a professorship position. And so, I mean, because being a scientist is something that's valued in their society. So they push it. They really, really push it. And it's versus being a scientist in the United States, it's incredibly competitive and hard, and you're most likely not going to make it.
And fighting for grants.
Exactly. Versus in China, they're just shoving money at you. They're just like, whatever you want to do, you got it.
Okay. That's helpful right there. That's helpful. Because that right there doesn't seem nefarious from like the CCP side. It might be, but it doesn't seem nefarious from the CCP side. But like that looks like it clearly demonstrates the incentives going off of what you're saying, right? Like, hey, if there's a bunch of grant money floating around, and it's like it's coming at me easy, then there's every reason for me to keep like putting out something, right? Whether it's high quality or not, I'll leave experts like you to judge. But to put out something, right? To put out we have a result, right? Is it worthy of publication, right? Is it that big of a deal? Does it actually push the science forth in any particular way? I don't know. And honestly, probably whatever government bureaucrat within the CCP who's giving me the grant probably doesn't know either, right? But I got published. And right, and so I'm proving myself. So I'm also curious as to if those perks are contingent on ongoing work. I mean, I think that's what the case is here in the US, right? That you have to continuously publish. So maybe it's like if you're giving all these perks, maybe you even expect more from you than what you get in America. I don't know.
In the United States, basically every professor is a startup, an independent startup, and you basically pay rent to the university by the grant money you take in. Like, let's say you get a prestigious NSF grant, and you're like, oh, really? You got lucky and you got a $2 million grant. And that sounds like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of money. University of California takes 60% of that and says, well, we pay your building costs, we pay your electricity, your plumbing, all that kind of stuff. So 60% is gone. So now you're left with $800,000, and you're like, okay, I can do something with $800,000. Well, it's $800,000 over 5 years. So now it's like, okay, well, now I need to pay my researcher, I need to pay a postdoc, and that's $80,000 a year in order to do that. So now we're down to half that amount. So now we have $400,000. Now they need an instrument in order to do the thing. That's $200,000 right there. So it's like you're out of money, basically really, really quickly to do this stuff, versus like China, they just kind of like give you what you need. And that's what he said. I don't know how realistic it is. I obviously haven't done
research in
China.
That's fair.
But basically, if you run out of grant money at the university level and you don't have a tenured position, like you're basically like
you're out.
Yeah, you don't get to do that anymore. And
they throw you out. Sorry, explain that.
You don't become a tenured professor anymore. You're not a tenured. You're an assistant professor, and you don't get tenure. You can't get the grants. You can't get the publications. I mean, in academia, it's called publish or perish. You either publish and you get the grants, or you perish and you're out. So it's like, you imagine that you spent, all those years getting your PhD, your postdoc, the PhD and postdoc, that's 10 years right there. Your undergrad, that's another 4
Well,
years.
probably like 2 postdocs.
Yeah, exactly. 4 or 6 years is normal now for like a university. So it's very, very rough. It's very rough.
And to expand a little bit on what your point, Prime, in terms of like the incentives, and how maybe there's the push by the CPU of like they want to build this reputation, and there are some signs that they are maybe gaming the system a little bit. I don't know how true this is, but I imagine there's probably some element of truth to it. So one of the metrics that is used for, let's say, the reputation of a researcher, or like tracking the output of a research institution, is, let's say, the number of times a paper is cited. If you publish a paper and other research cites your paper, well, that looks good for you. From what I understand, again, I don't know how true this is, but there seems to be maybe that they're encouraging Chinese researchers to cite other Chinese researchers. So they boost their metrics, like, oh, this paper is highly cited, but then that's like sort of a collective effort. Like, well, other Chinese researchers are citing other Chinese researchers.
I mean, in the United States, it happens a lot too. Like you'll get a reviewer that's like, oh, why didn't you look at the prestigious
this random researcher that came across
this random guy,
that's probably me.
Newkirk et al. 2023, this really good thing. Like, oh, I just happen as a reviewer to like that paper. It's like, well, okay, what's your paper, dude? So that happens a lot. They'll give you a list of papers to cite, and it's all their stuff, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so stupid. But okay, so it's there's little games and stuff people play, but you're absolutely right. Like the citation metric and stuff is absolutely what's used. It's unfortunate, but it definitely is true. That's how it works, man.
I've heard of and I'm not sure if this is the same thing, because I've heard the citation thing before, so I'm familiar with that. I didn't know how hard. I know they were gaming it to a certain extent, but the way you're saying it is like super amusing. So thank you for that. But also, what I've heard just recently, because of this other story that's brewing, is something called an impact score for a paper. Are you familiar with that? Is that the same thing, or is it different?
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. Yeah, the impact score is the impact factor, impact score. It's basically how many times other experts are linking to that and saying like how, because it's basically kind of like the peer review at the level, the world level, because then if an expert thinks that yours is good enough to cite, then you're good enough to it's good. I mean, it absolutely happens where if there's a huge impact factor paper going off in the industry, then you should probably be reading that in your industry. Like, for example, that's how I figured out that CRISPR was happening in 2013. There was this paper that was going off, and I was like, what is this thing? And I learned about it, and then I was able to implement it in like 2014 and start working on it, so it absolutely is a metric that's valid.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, I'd actually like to look into this. I'm curious if there's more papers, like research going into like observing what's happening within the Chinese university systems, because it sounds like super interesting. I'm curious, like, if there are additional incentives or additional pressure, or it could be the other thing, right? I could also see it being the opposite, being like there's a lack of pressure. Like maybe the situation is so good that like, hey, since the money just keeps flowing, right? Like I'm just going to like use that to boost myself, right? Like if I'm judged on a amount of paper out that's outputted, right? And I keep getting money, then there's no reason just to keep putting out more papers, because in the end that benefits me. And so that requires no like directive from the CCP, right? That's just other people following the pre-existing incentive structures within their own field, right?
Potentially. I don't know how the full funding system works in China. but I imagine there is some overlap, or I assume it's like I don't know for sure, but I assume they're not just they're like not writing a blank check. I would hope, or sort
I
of.
mean, there's people that, at all universities that are really old professors that have been tenured for a really long time and don't have any grants. They don't have any grad students. They don't have any postdocs. It's just like them. And I had one in my building, man. He just went from his office to his microscope room and back. I have no idea what he was researching. He had a room, and he just like it was.
Yeah, no, my university had these. So actually, they were a couple. They were both professors in our department, the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry. At the time, even when I was there, they were professor emerituses. They were retired, and they were no longer lecturers. They no longer had any grad students. They still have their lab space, but they would just kind of like tinker around and do sort of like random stuff. But they were just kind of like chilling.
Yeah.
And they were like quite old. Like I think they were at least like, I don't know, at least 75, if not like 80.
They're not gonna mess with you. You're gonna still get like your salary, like as a tenured professor. They're not gonna kick you out, so you can just kind of like mosey on. You're not gonna go anywhere, and you're gonna retire soon anyway, and they're not gonna kick you out. And you just kind of like, you have to come in as a professor and teach your yearly class, and like once a year kind of like do your thing there, and that's it.
But Corey's saying they're not even teaching.
And don't get me wrong, they were very nice people, at least to me.
Yeah.
Okay, but like, yeah, I know for sure they were no longer.
Very rare. It's very rare though. Like the more, I mean, like people like that don't exist nowadays. Like people our age that are coming in, it's much more cutthroat, and I mean that's one of the reasons why it's hard. It's really like to get a professor's position at a R1 university, which is like the top ranked university in the world. It's a lot like SCOTUS. Is you're on death watch. You're waiting for those people to go, because they're not going to.
It's true.
Kind of waiting, and they're not expanding the university. Right? They're not like the University of San Diego, California, San Diego is not going to be like, all right, we're going to expand, 20 more buildings. It's like, no, dude, we have the same amount. This is our spots, and you're just going to rotate in and out. So
okay, this is like I'm loving this, because I've heard like stuff about this, but like I haven't like ever dug into this as a researcher, right? Like I've seen videos, I've read a few articles on this, but like people who've been in this research space, is like very interesting hearing your stories here. So like they don't get fired. It's interesting what Corey was saying, that like they're like in their 80s, because you said like, hey, they're about to retire, but like it doesn't sound like there's any pressure to make them retire.
Oh, well,
yeah. No, that like
they go to a professor emeritus, and you can kind of like, you can come in and you can teach, or you can do whatever. It's kind of like you can do kind of like what you want at that stage of your.
They were just like, they had their own pet projects. Like they had no students. They just like go around the lab. They're in their lab, and the lab space they had left. Okay, they scaled it down. And they kind of like,
exactly.
They were just
they'll
kind of
push you into like a smaller and smaller building. Like you're not going to have a huge lab space in that space. Yeah. You're going to like be pushed off like down the hallway,
But they can still just like come and go as they please, and more or less do whatever they want. They'd also be there for all the the departmental fun stuff, the Christmas parties and all that stuff.
Christmas parties. Yep. Are they? So like Corey, for that couple that you were referring to, are they at least like a resource? Like, I imagine they must have, if they made it to that status, they must have some sort of, expertise.
No, yeah,
like honest, yeah.
Like they were a resource in terms of like, no, like I definitely consulted their expertise a few times. Although also, let's say I consult their expertise, but they also consulted mine from time to time, because they're not up to date. So the science they learned 60 years ago is different than the science I was learning today.
Exactly. It would be like consulting, like it would be like someone consulting on SpaceX going to someone that worked on the original moon landing from NASA and being like, what do you think about this? And it's like, well, that's not going to be very applicable. You know, I actually had this. I literally had this thing where I was imaging. I was imaging something through my algae for my nanotechnology applications and stuff, and I needed to like have a quartz crystal because that didn't diffract the light that I needed in order for emission and all that kind of stuff. And I had to talk to him because he was like, my PI was like, well, go ask him. He's like, this is what he does. And I was like, okay. So I like went. I was like, all right, this is it. So I went and like asked him, and he like rummaged through his drawers and stuff and found like this
through his knickknacks.
And it was like, dude, it was crazy. So he gave me this slide, and it was wrapped in this like a yellowed sleeve that was literally from like 30-40 years ago, you know. And I was like, well, here it is. And I was like, how is this going to be used? Like, I don't know. I don't even know the reference number on this. I don't know how to cite this in my paper. I don't know like what this is. It was just like a little label.
It's called proprietary technology, Greg.
Yeah. Like, yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's how you cite it. Like in a correspondence, you know, like a sentence correspondence. And you're just like, okay, dude, thank you. I'm like, all right, this isn't gonna work. Like, this isn't gonna.
All right, thanks, Grandpa. Get back to whatever.
Literally, that was his week. You know, that's it. That's what he did that week. You know?
Yeah, these are all interesting. But like, yeah, it goes. Sorry to interrupt, but like goes like both ways. Where it's like, yeah, like I definitely, like I said, consulted them because they, let's say, in terms of like the fundamental knowledge, like they were a repository for knowledge. But it's also interesting, like even just with like my own PI at the time, it's like, and you probably again know this better than I do in terms of like, you know,
what does PI mean? I'm sorry.
Basically our boss, our principal investigator.
Yeah.
And like the science that they learned, okay, is different than the science that I was learning at the time. And so like, at least for me in my experience, I don't know if it's the same for you, hopefully not, but it's like, you know, like the techniques that I was using and the technology that I was using, since my boss, PI, had no idea how it worked, they had no idea how to like calibrate their expectations in terms of like time. Like, this should be an easy thing. Well, no, it's not an easy thing. You don't know what you're asking. And it's like, and I've sort of had this experience like, okay, well, how about you show me how to do it then? And they couldn't, they couldn't, because they can't use the instruments that I was using because they didn't have
no idea, dude. They have no idea. And it's like, yeah, so basically when you get assigned a bunch of money from the government, you basically put down on a list like who's actually working on it. And there's like a lot of professors, and who's the principal investigator, who's the first investigator. So that we could like the grant that we're assigning this money to. And then within that grant, you're going to have line items for how many grad students, how many postdocs, that kind of stuff. And you're basically filling up slots on that grant for that PI.
Okay. Interesting. So again, I'm loving this. Well, one thing I'm gonna, we don't have to spend time on this, but just a slight pushback, right?
I could talk about this for a long time.
Yeah, but just a slight pushback, and Corey knows where I'm coming from with this. Hey, SpaceX should actually probably consult with people from NASA who did the first moon landing, because they actually did it successfully, and SpaceX was built spectacularly in that. Right? Yeah, that's how you do it right.
Like using archaic technology that's not applicable to like what you're actually.
I hear you. No, I hear you. It's just like I got a big bug up my ass when it comes to Elon Musk and his various ventures. But okay, we move back. I think we can move past that. But anyway, what I was actually curious about is, and it sounds like from what I'm hearing that the Canadian system sounds very similar to whatever is happening in America.
Pretty much. No surprise. We pretty much copy your system.
Sure. And so what I want to ask you two, right? And it'll be hard for you to do this, to answer this in a non-self-serving way, but do you think the U.S. should massively expand funding for the sciences? Like,
oh yeah,
was that what you want to see? Like, a flood of money. Okay,
I think Canada should do the same thing as well.
China's doing a great thing for that. China's doing a great job, like leading the world and like just throwing money at things that they don't necessarily know it's going to fit. And that's the only way to do hypothesis driven research. Just like how we didn't know that like Gila monster metabolism studies in the late 1990s was going to lead to Ozempic and tirzepatides and retatrutide and all that kind of stuff. But now it's a $1 trillion market that we have, discovered through that mechanism of GLP-1 agonists. Like nobody knew that.
Yeah, it's all about taking well, not all about, but largely taking big gambles and risks. It's like
exactly.
You really your example is perfect. You don't know what's going to happen 10, 20 years down the line with this research, with this foundational research.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why I highlighted this article and why I want to talk about it, because I find it so interesting, at least in terms of, pretty much, at least from what I gather, like China is essentially trying to model what the US was doing, whatever, 20, 30, whatever, or like, the educational institutions of the United States were like, these were like pillars of like the society of like, this is where all your technology, all your world leading technology is coming from.
Yep.
But then at least in my mind, the script has flipped. I think arguably there's, let's say, quote unquote, war on these academic institutions, right? Of like, they don't do anything. They're just like, wasting government money on, useless research projects, which, there's something to be said for, maybe I'm sure it exists at some level, but I think that's a super, minuscule fraction, as opposed to the Chinese, like they're literally like trying to replicate of like what the US was, and maybe in some sense still is, but it's declining of like, we want to pretty much come up with all the breakthrough technology. We want to be the world leaders in pretty much everything from, chemistry to biomedical science to, engineering. They clearly want to increase their overall technology output.
I love what you're saying here, and it wraps back around to like the very point of this weekly show that we're doing, because like MAHA is a symptom of this decline, right? It's exactly what you're talking about, like Make America Healthy Again. It's a movement, like led by know nothings, who are saying that like, based on their intuition and like they're like the like when they did a Google search and went down half of the first page, right? Like based on what they found there, they can tell you, Corey, right? The biochemical field. See, that's BS, right? And a lot of money is being wasted there. Right, nanotubes, Dr. Greg. Right, I don't have, and I'm not using nanotube technology.
Sounds made up, Greg.
Yeah, that's made up.
Yeah,
hey, Greg,
nanotube before?
Yeah, I haven't seen these nanotubes. Can you produce them? Can I hold them? Right, then it's not real. So, but like this is like the symptom of the decline, right? Because now, like you have all these bombastic stories that we've heard, right? Like, there was they describe like a bit of research and make it sound like ridiculous. Like there was the shrimp treadmill thing. I'm not sure if you guys saw that.
Rand Paul, the yearly list. And by the way, like I've actually wanted to go back to Ron Paul's 1990s speeches because I guarantee you he was talking about why would we want to study Gila monster DNA, metabolism,
Yeah. But they brought up like this research like with like a ship running on this treadmill. Like, oh, this is a massive waste of money. I don't remember the story exactly on this, but like they did just like went back and talked to that guy who like did this research. Right? Like, okay, like why were you doing research with a shrimp on a treadmill? Like, wasn't this a waste? He's like, first of all, like I made this treadmill. Like I just like made it like a few like stuff like a hardware store. And like I just like put this thing together. And then like he was measuring something, and it was like, from if I remember correctly, it was actually quite useful. The thing he was saying once it was actually explained, you're like, oh, that makes sense, right? Like, but like these things aren't immediately obvious to the to the common man, right? To a civilian, right? And neither should they be, right? They don't necessarily have to be. But when these things escape academia, they make great fodder for people who know nothing, aren't interested in learning anything, right? And who think that they're like the fact that they watch like true YouTube videos, right, on physics means like, oh yeah, I know more than you, Neil deGrasse Tyson. Like I have a understanding of quantum physics. No boy, right? Like quantum physics is just like a perfect field for this, and how like just utter BS gets thrown around, right? What's that guy's name? The Indian guy who like uses the word quantum a lot. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, I know what you're referring to, but yeah, I can't remember.
Someone in the chat will let us know. Someone in the chat. It's some guy. He used it for like on a spiritual level, right? He's like,
Deepak Chopra.
Yeah,
Deepak Chopra. Thank you. Yeah. Right. But that's another example of this, like how like just charlatans come in, right? Either charlatans like using the science for their own benefit, or saying that the science is absolutely useless and having no idea what the hell they're talking about, right? And then this gets a whole population easily angry about these things, and then like demanding policy changes, right? We have a whole culture and then like a subculture of individuals who have been like massively critical of and untrustworthy of the university system, right? Not because of like real failures there, and there are failures to be found in the university system. These aren't perfect, right? The Ivory Tower has failed like in so many different ways, and like maybe even done some real damage in some ways. And we can discuss this at some point in time. But like the reasons why they are mad at that is because within the university system, when they send their kids off, all of a sudden they start meeting people from different backgrounds, right? And then they come home far less racist than when they left. And that's like a big problem, right? Like universities where so many people open up their minds, right? They have these new experiences. They're like away from their parents and like outside their neighborhood, outside of their control. All of a sudden they get all kinds of crazy thoughts that like maybe gay people aren't like the devil, right? Demon spawn. And but that's like the start of it, right? That's the thing they focus on, and then from there sprouts all the rest of this nonsense.
Yeah, the Peter Thiel's interview with Ross Douthat of the New York Times was actually really good on this. They basically were. Is my camera frozen?
It is for me.
Exciting. Yeah. Okay.
But you look very, very engaged in the conversation.
I'm very engaged. I'm very looking very. But yeah, he's talking about Ross Douthat with Peter Thiel there. He's basically saying like how they feel like these billionaires feel that academia is like the intellectual deep state, and they think it's the intellectual deep state, and they feel that like the academics, they don't want to have to answer their moral questions to a bunch of academics that say that billionaires shouldn't exist. For example, he feels like he should just be able to do what he wants. So they're basically dismantling the intellectual deep state so that billionaires can like have more power in society, because Peter Thiel thinks that we haven't progressed enough in the last 100 years versus like think about 1920 to 2020 versus 1820 to 1920. He basically feels like he should have flying cars, and he doesn't have that right now, and he's mad about it. So he's like Peter Thiel is mad that like his life is very similar to us, the plebeians, and it makes him very upset. That's literally what it's about. It's very
That's my understanding of Peter Thiel as well. Not that I have done a super deep dive, but at least from all of the stuff that I've heard and read about him, and some of the few interviews that I've seen, he definitely appears to be very much pro technology. But yeah, he also seems to be understand, and also from what I understand,
pro surveillance technology.
Yeah, with the Palantir and all that stuff. But he also, from what I understand, he's also one of these Brian Johnson type of figures of like he wants to live. Ideally, he wants to like live forever type of thing. Because I believe there's some research that he's trying to fund in terms of like longevity and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Also, like I don't know, Peter Thiel. It looks like he's he's in the process of having some sort of work. He looks very, very weird to me in terms of like just how he like his
All
skin.
those, yes.
I don't know, like
It's very weird.
but I don't want to be too judgmental. I don't know, maybe there's something going wrong
No,
there.
fuck
But
him.
like, but
yeah.
but I do know from what I understand, because that's something that I've looked into. Of like, I think one of the reasons, to your point, Greg, of why he wants to, maybe dismantle or undermine universities, because like, well, universities carry out research with ideally, ethics boards and ethics approval. I think Peter Thiel does want to carry out research that is like would not be approved by an ethics board. He just wants to like pretty much remove all the guardrails and just like he wants that technocratic society at like no matter what the cost. That's the impression that I get.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I mean, first of all, Peter Thiel, like trying to literally be an evil overlord, all right? Like to live forever and to like get up to the nonsense that he already does, right? I mean, it's amazing him calling anyone deep state, right? Like he literally is like he is put himself at the center of the American surveillance system. like this is the surveillance state. That's him, right? Like all the nightmares that like regular Americans like, they imagine like what like the CIA might be up to, right? This guy is working hand in glove with them to do those things right now, right? Like every time we get like a glimpse into an unauthorized glimpse into Palantir, it's always like a new level of awful. Right? A new level of outrage as to like how they are violating our privacy, how they are assisting some awful government somewhere else to do some awful thing. This is just like what they do, and so I hadn't heard exactly what Greg was referring to previously about this intellectual deep state, at least how they picture it.
Mm-hmm.
That's perfectly believable, considering like their long-term goals. They want to, like, and by they I mean like the tech bros, like want to institute like a feudal system again. Like that's the goal. To put them at the top, and to us, like literally as peasants. Like they call us peasants, but they want us to actually be peasants, and to know our place in comparison to our betters, right? And so like because they have so much money, they think they should have more power in society. I remember watching one billionaire, because he was asked this question. This is years ago, and he's not like a household name, but he was asked a question about like voting, right? And he's like, yeah, I mean, like for every dollar, right? Every dollar, $1 should be one vote. Basically, is what he said. And he like kind of like laughed it off, but clearly he was serious. Like $1 should be one vote. Like why shouldn't I have more say? Because I'm more successful. Now, the reason why he's so successful is because he's utilizing, this great American system that we all pay taxes into. Maybe not him, but we all pay taxes into. That's built a level of infrastructure that he could run his businesses safely, right? With a police force, with a electrical grid, with a transportation system, all these things. But he doesn't want any of that. He wants to keep all of that, right? He wants to use that police force to suppress us when we start asking for, I don't know, a living wage, right? But he doesn't want to have to pay taxes, but he wants to have an undue influence more than he already does onto the American political system. And he doesn't want to be questioned, right? They really dislike being questioned by us, right? Again, know your place.
Exactly. Yeah, and I don't understand like his whole idea that like he should be living in literally like a Jensen's like future while we are like living. He literally talked about how he's pissed off. Like one of his examples is like the phone that he uses. Like it shouldn't be like he shouldn't have like the same phone. Like he needs to have like, you know what I mean? He like this is like the plebeian's phone. Like this is like gross. Like you know what I mean? Like why
how dare someone else have the same phone that I do?
Yeah, like what are you talking about? But I don't understand what I've never seen a billionaire ever improve my life like directly a single time. Like versus the hundreds of billions of dollars that Elon Musk, for example, has gotten in since the pandemic or the last couple of years. I mean, how has he like directly improved anyone's life, like versus like science and technology spending by the United States government to fund startup companies and new technologies. And, there's just so many different ways that I have like direct the examples for on, the silicon chip, the internet, the GPS, CRISPR, all these different huge like revolutionary technologies versus what have these billionaires done? Like done PayPal, like in the like in 2000, like that was it. Like that's why we have to deal with Peter Thiel for the rest of our lives is because of PayPal. And it's like, bro, they really don't think that electronic payments would have done like nobody else was going to do that. That was like the breakthrough I mean, it's just come on, like it's such a joke. They haven't even done anything with their own money that have necessitated anything in society in order to be proud of.
Yeah, I don't disagree, especially with the Elon Musk part. I think I haven't done the calculations.
Who
I think overall,
contributed damn near nothing from that.
been a
Right?
net negative to society.
Yeah. No, I
But
mean, even within PayPal, he didn't really contribute much of anything, and they want him out of that group. So just, but yeah, like, I mean, I agree with you, for the most part. That, I mean, like the way we look at these things is like like the great man theory of history, right? Like was these great men who maybe like these like singular names that we know that we can all rattle off, right? History revolves around them rather than like the hundreds, thousands, sometimes millions of people behind them, all moving to accomplish a goal. And then these were like the figureheads. Not that they didn't contribute something useful, right? Because oftentimes these people did, but that because that's how we like interact with history, right? We see these towering figures, right? We look for that in the present. And then so we ascribe to these individuals like a level of competency, a level of uh like moral clarity that they don't they don't actually produce, right? Like Bill Gates, like how did he make his money? He made his money through IP, protecting his IP. Bill Gates really cares about IP laws. Bill Gates really wants to like gate off Windows, right? In Microsoft, he like bought a bunch of companies and he integrated their technologies. And not that Bill Gates didn't add some in terms of business sense, right? Obviously, this man was an idiot. But like this idea of necessarily being a visionary. I mean, especially Bill Gates. Oh God, there's so much history around like Bill Gates and what he was up to at the time, the scummy things that he did. Oh man. But like, and all these, and now I'm tangenting hard here. But like, all of these billionaires are really concerned about like legacy. Like they want to be known as like I said, these innovators. And they also want to be like referenced and like so they love going to these conferences like one I was just describing previously, right? Where and you've seen them a ton of clips from these things, right? Like from Davos, right? They love Davos, where they sit down in front of a stage and then some reporter comes up and asks them about the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
These people have no expertise, right? Like on necessarily politics or like technology outside their realm, or like civil infrastructure or anything like that, but they're asked about these things all the time, right? They are asked to opine and they love that, right? Like these people that don't necessarily, they were good at one thing maybe, right? And maybe they were just good. Maybe they were just like the managerial head at the top, wherever else was, did the work. But like like they are addicted to everyone constantly up their ass asking them their opinions about anything, right? And they desperately want to preserve that privilege. It seeps through in everything that they do, and they hate then being questioned. Like maybe you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I don't know if you've seen that clip of Elon Musk saying how how chips are manufactured and they have to be manufactured in these like highly controlled environments, these clean rooms. I think Elon Musk was saying how he wants to like revolutionize clean. Like you should be able to go into a clean room where they make these chips and like eat something. And yeah, no, it was a wild claim. Like I think he explicitly said like he thinks they're doing clean rooms like wrong or incorrect, something along the. I'll find the clip. Where like there's no reason to be in a hazmat suit in a clean room, okay? At least according in his mind, it was what I'm gonna dig up the clip. But to your point, and maybe he's right, but I'm pretty sure most experts in this field, and there are also Twitter postings pretty much reacting to it, are like he has no idea like what he's talking about.
Well,
Like,
I mean, like we already have more direct proof of Elon Musk, right? Talking out his ass. Like that would be the Cybertruck. Elon Musk before the Cybertruck talked about how he had more knowledge about like manufacturing than anyone else in the world, right? These are things that charlatans do. They make hyperbolic claims. That's why Trump keeps doing them all the time, right? You just keep making large claims and you stick by them, and then you never retreat, right? You double and triple down when people challenge you on this. But anyway, he said the same. Like, yeah, like I probably know more about manufacturing than anyone else in the world, right? Okay, well, the Model 3, Model Y, Model X or whatever, right? Those models previously, those were done by other engineers, right? Like those things were out of his hands. Cybertruck, that was his baby. That's what he wanted to do, right? And then all of the engineers who look at this are like, this is a complete disaster. Why would you do this, right? Like basic automotive design would tell you not to do any of these things, right? But he did it because you know what? People have been telling him for years now that he is a genius, right? That he's a genius and who cannot do anything wrong. When you have that much money, no one will tell you do anything wrong, right? No one will ever say no to you. And so like you think, yes, like your farts smell like roses. And so yeah, you're gonna make all these decisions, right? And you're just gonna go full speed ahead, and then what you get is the mother effing Cybertruck. That's what that looks like when billionaires aren't checked.
So I posted an article in our group chat, and the title of the article, Elon Musk wants to build a dirty 2-nanometer chip making fab that you can smoke and eat cheeseburgers in, bets that Tesla will turn the concept of clean rooms upside down.
Like why though? That's just so weird. It's just like, so why? Like why would you make something more inefficient like that? That's
I think in his mind he can make it efficient, as in like there's no reason to have people in hazmat suits. You can just go in and smoke your cigar and cigarette.
So I'll say this on this idea, right? Like if he succeeded, that would actually be really good because like that would that would be revolutionary. Yeah, it would lower the cost of these chips. Because like it takes a lot of effort just to like create a room, right? And manage a room. That has to be hyper clean, right? Like your hairs like escaping can like ruin a batch of chips. Like it's a big problem. So if he solved that problem, actually be quite useful to the industry, right? I just think there is no reason to believe that Elon Musk, right, can do this, or even the company that he runs. Because I know there are people under him who are quite intelligent and quite competent, right? And the problem is they're held back by a goddamn idiot, like who doesn't understand anything he's talking about, right? And so like he like makes these places worse. Like he did with Twitter, massively degraded Twitter because he didn't know what the hell he was doing. And so there's no reason to think that his company would be the one to make that breakthrough. I'd let it be proven wrong, but there's no reason. There's no reason to think that.
Yeah. I'll also post the clip because Elon Musk, unless this is AI, but I'm highly confident it isn't. Elon Musk explicitly said like he thinks they're getting the concept of clean rooms like wrong. Very bizarre.
I don't know. I mean,
and obviously, I can't judge since that's definitely outside of the realm of my expertise. But let's say going by his track record, like I'm very, very skeptical of this game. But I'm curious, Greg, if you want to say, or I don't know if you are familiar with Neuralink from Elon Musk. That's something that I'm more than willing to talk about. But how do you view Neuralink? If you want to say, or if you looked into it.
So like my grandfather's, so my professor's professor So like it's like my grandfather, basically my granddaddy lab. The Strano lab in MIT, they are like the world renowned nanotechnology lab. And basically they are on the cutting edge of using nanotechnology. And one of the things that how you apply nanotechnology is you have to have it installed somewhere. How you're putting it in, and you have to create the connections, and it has to be installed. So what they do is they put in sheets. They put them in because the sensors are all in a line, and you can get the excitation and the emissions from the what you need really easily. So that's like a really applicable way of doing it. And so they actually did do one of their things that they did, and this was like 10 years ago now. They did basically a carbon nanotube based sheet, and then they installed it into a mouse brain, and they put it on there in order to kind of like as a sensor for like whatever, in order to do imaging and stuff like that. I thought it was like really interesting, like what that was. So I can understand like why and how you would want to do it. I wouldn't want to do it myself. I think it's like pretty dangerous to do, like, the biggest problem with Neuralink is basically none of the studies are being published, right? We have no idea what the actual data is. It's completely closed.
Yeah, there are no studies.
Yeah. So it's like there's no peer review process here. We're just basically going off of peer press releases. Exactly. So it's like there's nothing to know, and I think that's the worst part about it. I think in the future, could there be a nanotechnology enabled chip that would be safe and used? Like, sure, yeah, I think that it could be, but it's just reckless cowboy science that I think like makes this look really bad, especially the nanotechnology stuff, where it's like there is kind of like an applicable, like a way of understanding this stuff and real research going on. But again, the problem is that you guys don't know Michael Strano's name, but we know Elon Musk's name. Strano is the genius, not Elon Musk, right? If we had a meritocratic society, and people, and we actually lifted up like the scientists that were actually doing the hard work, like we were talking about in China, right? Where China lifts up these researchers, and the scientists are kind of like, bigger, and they're, bigger part of the culture. That's who you'd know, but we don't, unfortunately. And these billionaires just suck the life out of the media. They take up oxygen in the space in the room. They take up oxygen in our capital. They suck it from us, and there's parasites in so many different ways.
Oh my God, yes.
But I'm just curious. There's just one last. I'm just curious if you want to say, or I don't know how much you've looked into Neuralink, but so I definitely know for sure, because I track this research of like there are multiple research teams that are trying to solve or working on these brain computer interfaces and installing these chips. I'm just curious, like, how confident are you that Neuralink's going to be the first one that like actually has like a viable product that that can be used to, let's say, restore function to someone who has has lost function in their limbs, or that restores communication to someone that has lost the ability to communicate with their mouth or vocally. As in, are you confident that Neuralink can solve that problem, or would you be more apt to go with the research that's coming out of academic institutions?
I mean, personally, I have no idea. I don't work with mammals at all, and so I'm not the person to ask on that one. But I would trust Strano and people like that who have been working on it for over 10 years, that are doing proper mouse studies and like trying to get peer-reviewed data out there and have like an entire world of researchers behind them, versus some guy that's just playing with ape brains that he can pay for the animal studies for, and he has no idea what he's actually doing. I don't like, yeah, it's just, I maybe Strano's consulting for them, maybe they're working on it, but I don't trust what's coming out of there.
So Corey, I believe you spoke to me about this before, and so like this would be good for the audience. Like so when something that you and I connected on was our mutual like deep dislike of Elon Musk and his projects, right?
That is the
But
foundation of our relationship. Absolutely.
yeah,
Nothing else.
yeah, nothing else. But like, uh, I remember when we were first discussing this, and I'm like, all right, well, yes, Elon Musk is a fraud in all these areas, right? In pretty much everything. However, right, what I said was, Neuralink. Like, well, that seems pretty good, right? Like, I can't like fault the mission, and it seems like they're making some level of progress. And then you gave me a lot of pushback on that, right? And it sounded like if I remember correctly, it's like, well, like because we hear of the big press releases that like our friend Dr. Greg was talking about are when they talk about like a breakthrough that happened with a human patient being able to do something, right? Like with their neural interface, right? But you were saying is that like the work that they've done has like is not like breakthrough, like has been done before. Could you expand on that?
Yeah. So uh, ab- about late last year, I think it was around, I don't know, somewhere between like, I think June and, August, September. Either way, fairly recently in the past 6 months or so, Neuralink posted a YouTube video, pretty much like giving sort of a, corporate polished update. Like, here's all the progress we made with Neuralink in the past, whatever X number of years or since our last update. And they're going through, all these milestones that they say they've achieved as an example. So, as an example, now that they have implanted Neuralink in some human patients, okay, and like they're testing them out and testing the capabilities, and like one of the things that they highlight in the video is like, okay, it allowed some patients that have pretty much they're essentially paralyzed from the neck down, as in I believe these are ALS patients, or individuals with Lou Gehrig's disease, that it seems to be quite advanced, and so they pretty much before the Neuralink, they're essentially like operating things through like I think like eye movements and eye tracking, or pretty much like
Or
a
like
bunch
a
of different
tug
devices.
thing? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
exactly. But pretty much like, yeah, essentially no mobility at all from the neck down. And so some of these Neuralink implants, uh, this has allowed some of these patients with the implant to now move a cursor on the screen, which I'm not saying that's a bad thing, okay? But one of the ways that they were able to sort of market it or claim it as a breakthrough, where if you look into the research, the ability for an implant to like move a cursor on the screen, that was like that was solved like, I don't know, at least 10, if not 15 years ago. But then how they're able to sort of like spin it is with this technology, it allowed this person to play a computer game. I think it was like something similar to Candy Crush, or exactly Candy Crush, where it's like they were making the claim of like this person like broke the world record for like high scoring for someone controlling using control of like a brain computer interface, and that represents like one other person like in the world. Or like it's a world record. It's a world record because like no one else has, or like very few people have this type of implant in their brain and is controlling a mouse or playing the game with that. And so like yes, it's almost like some of these ridiculous Guinness World Records type of thing of like this is the first person to do 10 pull-ups while wearing clown shoes and I don't know, singing happy birthday. It's like, yes, I guess that is technically a world record, but that's because nobody else is doing it. And yeah, and even then, just going with all the other all the other updates that they mentioned in the video, they were all along in similar lines. And again, I'm not saying this is all like a bad thing, but they were like pushing that like this is breakthrough, and this does get media attention because obviously they're a company, and so they want the positive press, as opposed to like these researchers at the academic institutions that like they have solved that problem many years ago, and they have moved on to more advanced things, in my opinion. But they're not putting up press releases because that's not not interested in doing that, and also it's like that's not what they're about. And so, yeah, that's pretty much that's how I view Neuralink, or that's one of the reasons why I'm very negative on Neuralink personally. And not that I'm a world expert, I'm not a neuroscientist or neurosurgeon, but I do have a very solid, decently above average foundation in neuroscience, and I track the research in this space quite heavily, and I'm able to read it, pretty well. Where like, yeah, based off what I see of what Neuralink is doing or has done, well, one, not all that groundbreaking, and two, what they appear to be trying to do, just like, with the full self-driving, I think they're going to run into some very real walls that they will not be able to overcome.
I was checking out like if Strano had like done a new paper. So in basically 2022, they figured out a new way to implant a sensor deeper into the brain, which is harder to do because the tissue doesn't, basically it captures the emission that you would need in order to, basically the emission that's coming from the sensor needs to be, caught with any type of camera, and that camera is hard to detect if it's deeper into the tissue, because it's going to kind of like on a foggy day, it's going to hard be like diffuse that stuff. So that's that is a monitoring way. So that would be for like cancer diagnoses or any type of monitoring, which would be kind of like a developmental thing, which I think honestly has more promise, like just like in general right now. But then I was looking, and there was just last month, December 9th, Columbia University School of Engineering and Applied Science, BISC is a ultra-thin neural implant that creates a high-bandwidth wireless link between the brain and computers. Its tiny single-chip design packs tens of thousands of electrodes and supports advanced AI models for decoding movement, perception, and intent. Initial clinical work shows that it can be inserted through a small opening in the skull and remain stable while capturing detailed neural activity. The technology could reshape treatments for epilepsy, paralysis, and blindness. I didn't even know about that. This is not something that I'm like usually. It's not something I'm doing.
Yeah, there's a lot of I think more and more of these will come out where sort of like these smaller scales, and just to sort of expand on one of the points that I made earlier in terms of like where I think Neuralink will, run into some major technical challenges, if not arguably impossible challenges to overcome. So I've been referring to other brain-computer interfaces, as in like what's going on at academic research institutions. And as I sort of frame it of like, they're doing much more advanced stuff. But one of the reasons why they're doing much more advanced stuff is because the brain-computer interfaces that they're using, and like, I encourage you to look up some of these papers, like, because they usually have accompanied video of like these people using the brain-computer interfaces with the chip, and like how they're translating speech on the screen just through like their brain signals. But these chips that are implanted in the brains for these individuals that are at these research institutions, they're not wireless implants, as you can see in these videos. Like these patients, they have the wires, like the chip is in the brain, but the wires are also going into the brain, because typically what is done is because the power source, the battery to power these things, is located on the outside. Okay. The reason for that is because, as I'm sure everyone knows just by their cell phone, like batteries create heat. Okay. And I think one of the reasons why, Neuralink is more or less like they seem to be so far limited, like let's move a cursor, on the screen. Okay. Which I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it's like this chip, the Neuralink chip, is wireless. Okay. And there's only so much battery you can pack into that thing. And two, there's only so much power you can get from battery that you can't get it overheating, as you don't want your cell phone battery to have the temperature in your brain start melting tissue. Okay.
True.
And so that's the reason why, as of now, like these the actual researchers researching this technology, what they typically do is like they plant the chip in the brain, and like you have a whole battery, it's powered externally, because to power an internal chip with no wires whatsoever, you're limiting yourself in like the power that you can output, and two, just like you can't even extract all the energy you need from that battery, because you can't overheat, because you're just going to start melting your brain.
So but as you describe this is very typical for Elon Musk, and I don't mean to create this into an Elon Musk episode. I'm sorry, right? But
I'm not complaining. But maybe the audience is, but I'm not.
If we're talking about charlatan billionaires, right, and people who are like taking advantage of our system and our lack of understanding of it all, right? Like Elon Musk is just at the center of all of this. He's just like so prominent because he wants everyone to know his name. So that's why I'm using him as example. But like this is actually consistent with all the other things he's done, right? Like okay, so the reason why he wants as our friend Corey described, right? Like it implanted within the brain that uses some that is forced to use some sort of low power battery or low power source, right? With no wires, right? Is because that's what he imagines it like looking like in the future, right? Like he saw sci-fi like in the past, right? Maybe you've seen some sci-fi show, right, where they do have some sort of brain computer interface, and they did it, but there's no wires, right? It's just like in the brain, and you're just like, it's a really cool looking cyborg, right? And so he wants to replicate that. This is consistent with Cybertruck, right? He saw Blade Runner, right? And he wanted to create that. He was explicit about this. I'm not like putting in his mouth. This is what he said, right? And he's like, yeah, I wanted to be like the Blade Runner because he thought like the main character of the movie was named Blade Runner, but it's not. He doesn't even understand. He doesn't understand like what he's even talking about. Like he doesn't understand the media itself, right? But he saw an aesthetic and he liked it. And so that's what the technology has to follow, despite like, reality getting in the way. And then, right, there's the Teslas. All other companies, at least all the ones that I'm aware of, are for their self-driving implementations are using LiDAR. LiDAR is just like it's great. Like it's just like like right now it's like the step, the crucial technology that helps make self-driving as much as we have achieved, right, possible. But he doesn't want to do that. He wants to instead just use like regular like visual cameras to do this, which like are very hard. It's an extremely difficult technological challenge to overcome, to just use those, to limit that for a computer. But he has handicapped Tesla to this, right? And so like but like because the aesthetics look better, right? Like it just looks better without like a LiDAR system. And like he's just like, that's how like computers should work, like my eyes do, right? Like they should be able to input data the way I do it. And because I've seen it in sci-fi, right? Like there was an android and he had eyes and it worked just like mine. And so the car should work just like mine. This is his level of thinking. People, I'm not making this up. Just look it up. This is his level of thinking. This is how he operates, right? So all this is consistent. This is it's like a kid, right, with a very poor surface level understanding of art. And he wants to like imitate that. He's got these toys and he wants to like recreate it with his toys, right? But like without like some sort of deeper understanding of what is actually going on and how that would actually work in real life. He just has the money to do these things.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing full self-driving. Well, full self-driving has been arriving every year for the past 10 years, as in like and so, or I think even longer, like past, I don't know, 10, 15 years. And I think we're seeing I'll be happy to be proven wrong, but I think we're seeing like the full self-driving from Tesla is like hitting wall. There's a hurdle that they can't seem to overcome, because I think if I remember correctly in terms of the numbers of like they have been rolling out the robo-taxis, the Tesla robo-taxis, I think in like Austin. I think there's another city, I think in LA as well. But I think like in one of the original calls early this year, in like whatever these typical, shareholder calls, it's like Elon Musk was claiming or saying that they're going to have these robo-taxis in I think at least like 25 cities by the end of the year. I think he was making the claim of like, yeah, like half the US population would be serviced by these robo-taxis by the end of 2025. And like definitely the 25 cities totally didn't happen at the end of 20. I think they're still in 2 cities. And I think he was saying like, yeah, they're going to be fully autonomous, no drivers. I think even as of today, like the robo-taxis that are in service, there's still a driver still in these.
Well, there's a person in the side.
Yeah, in the passenger seat, right? They're not driving. They're whatever the safety.
They have a brake. Yeah. They have a brake mechanism. But even more than that, right? Like Elon Musk talked about, he had a quote talking about like, well, if you're geofencing, you're not really doing AI, like or self-driving, right? Because that's how Google was doing it. They were geofencing. By that it means like your cars can only operate in a certain area.
Yeah.
And beyond that, like yeah, they're restricted. And so it's like, yeah, if you're geofencing, you're not actually really doing self-driving, and we don't have to worry about that. But then when he actually wrote out the robo taxis, such as they are, absolutely they were geofenced because you need to do that when you're starting off at the very least. And he's so far behind. Like he's so far behind Waymo. Like Waymo is like actually doing the thing right now. And if anyone is going to make this breakthrough in self-driving, it would be Google. Absolutely. Like they're they're almost there. And then there's even was it it's called like Zooks, I think. It's like this is like it's brand new, right? You're not gonna have heard about this. But it's like it's basically like a mini cab. Yeah, it's like a mini cab. And there's no drive. There's no like driver's seat, no steering wheel, no nothing within it, right? Like you get in, there's like a bench on this side, there's a bench on this side, right? And it's just passenger. And then yeah, and the vehicle takes you. They had them at CES this year, but they've been around for like 2 years or so. I think, and if I remember correctly, and I could be wrong, if I remember correctly, I believe it's an Amazon venture or Amazon backed venture, but I could be
I
wrong.
believe you are correct. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's like you see them, they're actually doing the thing. They're going down highways, right? They're just driving on their own. They don't look like a regular cars, right? They look like just like a cab, like not a cab, like not like a yellow cab, like a train, like a tiny train car cab as they move along. But like they're actually accomplishing it, right? But they don't have the aesthetics that Elon likes. And so Elon won't try to imitate that technology. No, we'll use visual cameras, which that can be fogged up. Like guys, the reason why you don't want to do this because rain gets on cameras. Cameras get like covered in dirt.
So
right?
does snow in Canada.
And snow, right, get iced up, and that impairs their ability to look, right? And there's fog, right? But LiDAR like ignores at least most of that stuff, right? And it gives a computer a much better picture of its surroundings, right? But no, it needs to work like my eye. And so he's handcuffed the very intelligent people in Tesla under him because he's an idiot.
Yeah, no, and I think that's again, I would be more than happy to be proven wrong about Neuralink because like if he actually does this, like a wireless implant that is able to do all these things, that would be revolutionary. That would be a game changer for many people around the world that need this type of technology. But like, yeah, I think I think he's, I mean, you made the case that he has handcuffed Tesla and full self-driving. I think these handcuffs will be even stronger with Neuralink. It's like there's just only so much so much you can get out of a chip, a wireless chip that, from what I can tell, based off of what I read about the dimensions, like it's like sort of a small stack of quarters, like nickels. It's like you have to power it with that, and you think you're going to like restore limb function with something like that? Almost certainly not.
That's a good point.
I think didn't they even do even more restrictions on primate research in the United States because of RFK and stuff like it's been.
I believe they're phasing out like full animal testing. Last I read.
Way scaled back, like way scaled back. So like the idea that you would, I mean, think about that, like without extensive animal models in apes, you're gonna just install something in a brain. Like what? Like that is so unethical. That would be. There's no way. There
are a lot of Elon fans who would volunteer, right? And they're not much better in terms of brain power there. So I mean, if they're going to volunteer, let them do it.
And even like what you brought up with this aspect of aesthetics, I think even now it's sort of like well, being thrown in his face or hurting him now because from what I understand, if I read correctly and if I'm remembering correctly, so Teslas seem to have these fairly unique door handles where it's like they're flush with the surface of the car, and like you have to like do something to like get them to pop out. And I believe I remember correctly, like since these were associated with some safety issues, I believe China is like outlawing like these types of handles as in like they have to be like pretty much mechanical. They can't be like flush. And therefore Tesla is forced to, if they want to sell their cars in China, which China is a huge market for Teslas, although just like everywhere else.
Market for
Exactly.
Tesla.
But just like everywhere else, even in Europe. But like, yeah. But since I believe, I think it's like in the next 6 to 12 months, I think there's like a deadline of like, it will be illegal to have these types of car handles in China, and therefore Tesla either has to like redesign them, or they just can't sell their cars in China.
Yeah, I looked it up, and yeah, basically RFK wants to phase out all animal models. So it's like because they're too expensive. So it's like a cost saving measure. So it's like I mean, what? I mean, I'm like blown away. I guess it's so it could be so expensive that only the billionaires can afford those type of treatments and those experiments. Though yeah, Quing, exactly. It would crush innovation. I mean, the only reason why we have medical science is because of animal models. So the idea that we can't do any primate research would be. I mean, these are the same people that are saying that like vaccines aren't researched enough, and then now we're like we're ending.
Good point. Good point.
That's very weird to me. So like I don't know, man.
A total phase out seems extreme. I myself have no problem saying I'm pretty critical of animal models, but like I know that they have value. As in, I think a total phase out of all animal models seems very extreme, and I would agree that that's an overall a bad thing. But I do think that we tend to rely on animals maybe a little bit too much, but they absolutely do have their place.
I mean, what else would you use? I mean, how would you test without an animal?
Yeah, for clinical trials. I'm just more talking about animal models, like animal models for like tumors and cancers.
Let's say Neuralink. Like how design the experiment that you would use cell tissue culture for Neuralink experiments.
No. I agree with you. You would have to like scale it up. I would not want the first organism to receive a Neuralink implant to be a human.
Exactly. They have computer models for someone in my chat saying they have computer models for. How would they have computer models for neurons, neural mapping? That would be. I don't know.
I'm sure maybe individual neurons, maybe. But I don't think a whole brain. If we have a full computer model of a whole brain, then I think we solve AI or general intelligence.
Yeah.
Someone in my chat that's saying, it's nonsense, but they claim that the computer models can be substituted for animal testing. Yeah, I mean that for a brain. I mean that's kind of the whole thing. It's way more complex than any like computer model that we have. So
yeah, it seemed. Go ahead.
And exactly what Strano was talking about, or having the problem and limitation in terms of detection inside of tissue, like you have confounding problems where there's layers upon layers of cells, and you just can't replicate that, even with the best. Yeah, I'm a microbiologist, right? I would love cell tissue culture to have something to say about that, but I don't think it can.
Yeah, so like, and I mean, you guys would have a better idea of this than me, right? But it seems like these like computer models, well, they're based off the work we've done on these animal models and these like in human experiments, like from cadavers and the whatnot, right? Like we get more data doing experiments there, and then we update the computer model, right? Exactly. And so from there, the computer model might be good for like doing maybe some advanced prototyping, without like going through like the whole animal testing process, like the whole long laborious thing. Maybe that can speed it up, but that's only after like updating the computer with what reality is. Like we don't have, like our friend Corey was saying, a perfect like computer a diagram, like a working understanding of the human brain, right? Like that means like our understanding of the human brain has just lived up for like a century or so, right? Like if we perfectly mapped out exactly how the human brain works and there's no discoveries to be made, right? Then from there, then that's when you can just use the computer model, right? Because it has everything in there, and then you can just experiment it right within the computer model. But like if we don't know everything about it, right? Well, that means we have to test whatever it is in real life against something. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, and what are the adverse side effects of like how does a brain develop or have like the long-term implications of having this in there? How do you? I mean, these are the same people that are afraid of like 5G and radio waves. Right. I mean, they're talking about like wavelengths being, impacting you that are the size of mountains that can't intercalate inside your DNA. But what about like a chip that's in there? And exactly what Corey's talking about, the heat that would be associated with it, or like any type of like, even you could have some adverse side effects that would have to be studied for a long term. I mean, absolutely. It's so, I don't know. It's just dangerous. It's like, it's weird. And you're right, Prime, and it's kind of like this sophomoric kind of, like cowboy science stuff that isn't serious. Like this isn't that you have to, like good science takes like radical claims requires radical amounts of data. Like you have to do your everything. You can't just like jump to the conclusion and then just try it like and say, oh, I did it. And it's like, well, no. You have to like that big jump that you just claim. You have to show every step of the way why it is what it is. So it's just and it shows because he's not a scientist. He doesn't know what he's talking about,
But like he says, and again, go back to the Cybertruck, right? Like because his son, one of his many kids, right, says something to him that like literally inspired the Cybertruck, right? He's his son who was a child, right? And so I forgive him. His son said,
For now.
why doesn't the future look like the future, right? And by that he's referring to the future as imagined by people in like the 1960s, right? And what they thought the future looked like. And so when they got the chance to like work in Hollywood, they like, design things the way they thought it would be, right? And so when he says, why doesn't the future look like the future? He's and Elon Musk thinks this is a brilliant goddamn idea, right? Like what he's saying essentially is like, why doesn't our current president look like a facsimile of a narrative, right? Which was another facsimile of a future narrative, right? Like these are multiple extrapolations from sci-fi books, right? Put into film, right? And that has created within like our general minds, right? Like if you just ask a random person what does like the future look like, right? Well, they're just going to like output to you like what they've seen in a sci-fi film, right? That's their like maybe we're in silver jumpsuits, right? Like that's like from movies and TV shows. And so like why doesn't the future look like the future? Meaning just like a facsimile, like a thought like experiment by people like a century ago. This is what he's looking for, but it's the aesthetic and he likes it a lot. So why does it look like that? Let me design a car that looks like that. Oh, it was a disaster that every automotive engineer in the world could see coming. Oh, who would have known?
Yeah, it's weird because this is the big problem that I have like with, and one of the reasons why I do science communication, where it's like the actual like what we actually do in science and research science would be you'd think it would be Star Trek, like the things that we can actually do in the lab, but you just don't know about it because we haven't like communicated about it. Even like the undergrad to grad level is like a huge jump in like what we actually do. You do things in the lab every day that you only mention in a paragraph at the end of the book of like, this is where the future might be in the future. But that's what you're doing, and now we have crazy new inventions, especially in the last like 15 years. Like it's even in our lifetimes, we have had huge paradigm shifts in molecular biology, developmental biology, the creation of molecular biology as a field, really, GFP green fluorescent protein revolutionized developmental biology. So now we can understand how things grow and
I would say
develop.
all of biology.
Yeah. And the imaging, you have, and then the revolution of microbiology with next generation sequencing and understanding how microbes are everywhere and how they tie with the body and the brain and the roots of plants and how they're in the environment and the oceans, and gene editing technologies with CRISPR, and like there's just like so many different revolutions that have happened like within our lives. So it's like we don't even need, my point is that like we don't need this kind of this we actually are doing really good work, and academia already is producing this incredible leaps forward. We don't need the help of like Elon Musk to be throwing out these spitballing ideas, because we need to like jumpstart technology, and it's like we don't need that. Science has already been doing an incredible job as a community, as a worldwide institution, to like push things forward and create new things and new medicines that have like revolutionized our lives and improved our lives and saved millions of lives through the COVID vaccine. Like we don't need the help of like Elon Musk.
I agree wholeheartedly. I just want to say quickly, but I think, and going back to sort of the original conversation in terms of like, I think one of the reasons why on the right there is this sort of war on universities or higher education is that I think the impression that I get is like they think that research should not be done at universities, as in instead of funding universities like Harvard, you should just give billions of dollars to people like Elon Musk and just have this research privately funded. And I don't think that's the case. I think that'd be a huge waste of money for a variety of reasons that we just already went through.
So,
and it could fund 100 billion. Just to give you some numbers here, $100 billion funds every single scientist and every single university in the entire United States for a year. So like when we have Elon Musk getting up to $500 billion, that's half a decade of research and startups and new technologies that are being produced, and dozens of new companies out of each university, times all the universities in the country, times all the grad students, times all the it's like that's an entire country of research for $100 billion, and we're giving him that like nearly every year now.
Yeah. So that he can send rockets to space and it can crash land, and you can not get to Mars and probably not get to the moon. And
to put it another way, we could if we taxed Elon Musk's gains, we could double the amount of scientific output that we would get every year.
Yeah, and that's why I find it so strange for a variety of reasons. But yeah, again, going back to this funding of universities, and like how people on the right, they view it as like a waste of money. But then again, going back to the original article that we were referring to, it's like China is pouring billions into their research institutions. Like
exactly.
You think, and China has some major economic problems. Okay, you think they want to waste billions to replicate pretty much the U.S. system, as in to have their research institutions as like pretty much the pillars of research and academic excellence all across the world. It's like there's a reason why China is trying to outspend. I think is outspending or on track to outspend the United States in research. They're not doing it to waste their money. They're doing it because I'm pretty sure they see something there.
Oh, for sure. You're spending like $200 to $300 billion just in solar and wind arrays inside of that's just in they're doing the Inflation Reduction Act and the infrastructure bill that we passed. They're actually doing that like every year. So like and that's just that. That's not the science spending that they're doing at the universities. On top of that,
so I'm going to come back to that what you just said. I'm writing it down because that's you touched on something very important. That'll have like huge consequences later on. But just to roll back just for a second, Someone else made this point. Someone very intelligent like made this point. So I'm just gonna ape it, but I'm just gonna do it a little worse than they did. But I'm gonna like yeah. So basically, they talked about like the life of an individual, right? Who like he was born in 1880 and then like died in 1950, right? That's a 70-year time span, right? So that's a life lived, right? Um, but like comparing that life of someone like their child, right? That was maybe born in like 1910 and then died in like 1980. These two people, right? Father and son, right? They live completely different lives. That like the childhood that the father had, like in that period of time, like jet technology appeared, right? Like there were so many advancements like within that period. It like literally reshaped our society, and so like his childhood is unrecognizable to his son by the time his son what did I say, he was born in where did I say 1910, right? Like by the time that like this person is mature and ready for their kids, right? Like their society looks completely different. Like their lives, the work that they're doing, um, like shifts completely, right? Like what like their life outcomes change completely in a radical way. Um, but compare that, right, to like well yourself Dr. Greg, right? And like and maybe your father, or in comparing that to like your child, like yes, you're correct, there's innovation happening, and it absolutely has. I mean, like in terms of like the rise of the internet, right? And cell phones, those things are huge advancements with like, and like Google, like you know, like being able to Google like information. Those have had major changes in our lives, but like from an observer's perspective of the world, it hasn't changed fundamentally in the same way, right? Like we're living a lot of the same lives with a lot more information, but like it's like at least, and maybe someone can push back on me in here. Maybe I'm not considering everything, but like the scale of the change just isn't the same, right? Like what that person born in 1880, like what they lived like, is just like nothing compared to what their child experienced, right? Like we all of a sudden urbanization took on like a whole new role, and like cities really did become the engines of our economy. Like even our economy like has shifted radically in all sorts of ways. And so anyway, the why I'm saying all this is that like um from a person who is like obsessed with aesthetics, right? And obsessed with like a surface level analysis, like that person will say, oh, well, innovation has stalled, right? Because we were supposed to have further leaps. And so we should have had those flying cars by now,
Yeah.
right? That would have been like the kind of change that we were looking for. We should have moon bases by now, right? Like
Yeah.
those are the things that were promised, that you know the future was going to look like, and those things would have like radically shifted like our environment in a way that's obvious to like the uninformed, you know, right? And so I think that like that informs how some people look at like what they see as a stagnant world. When just like you and Corey have pointed out, it's absolutely not, right? With all the research you guys are talking about, absolutely big things are happening, but they're just not. They're maybe not so much products that you can buy, you know, right? Like the invention of the vacuum changes the way like people interact with their homes, and how like they clean it, like the amount of labor that goes into it. That's a huge change. But like since then, I mean, we still have vacuums, and they're better than they were before, but they're still vacuums, you know, right?
I think that my kids are living in a fundamentally different world than like what
Okay.
my dad like grew up in. I think like uh, um if you think about like a sphere of influence that people had, like that my dad had, you know, growing up, you know, he went to college in the 70s and like that kind of stuff. I mean, you're really limited to the surrounding area. And I would argue that people nowadays pretty easily have like a global influence and a global touch. They can like have and create videos that go global. They have communication for humans all across the globe. My show, like right now, people come in Australia, UK, different parts of Europe. It's like I was talking to someone from South Africa, the 2 nights ago. So it's like it's pretty incredible.
I agree with you though, but I agree with you on that. Like I said, the internet has changed our lives. But it doesn't do so in an aesthetic manner. Like it's not something you can hold in the same way, right? It doesn't.
I would agree. My counter example there would be the smartphone. I think the smartphone and how we can interact with technology in those ways has gotten that change. I think science has been revolutionized, absolutely, compared to the 70s versus now. It is a completely different thing. Absolutely. Because of the technologies that I rattled off.
Again, I agree with you. I'm saying that like to a person like Elon Musk, this is why I'm trying to get into the headspace.
Got you.
That
Okay.
type of person.
Yeah.
I'm on the same page. There's no disagreement between you and I.
You need a little more blunt force trauma to your brain.
A little bit more blunt force trauma. Yeah.
Exactly. You're exactly right. This is exactly what Peter Thiel is talking about. He is very mad about, like, he wants a flying car. He thinks that should have more privilege and more capabilities. And it like really makes him mad that we're not fundamentally different. But I think like it's very. It's wild, man. I think we've had so much change and so much awesome forward progress. I'm getting summoned here as a dad mode real quick, but give me 1 second. I'll be back in 2. Carry on.
So like I was saying, I agree with what our friend Greg was saying previously, right? Like like the internet is like absolutely revolutionary. Like the thing with like Corey and I would not have met, right?
This would have been inconceivable to me. Like even I was grew up. Well, I knew before the internet, and like I knew the early days of dial-up, and even then, this was not on my radar of like having or being on panels with 8 other people from around the world, and doing that regularly. Like totally inconceivable to me. Like 25 years ago.
I was thinking, I was like just the other day. It was like 2 days ago. I was like really like just thinking about like our people's ability. I think the reason I was thinking about this is that like the way that people have used technology and just like have been taking it for granted. This is what got me thinking about this, right? But like Google, and you can just replace that with any other search engine as well, but like the ability to just like at a whim type in a phrase and pull up knowledge like all of human knowledge, like most of it available to you at your fingertips by just like typing a few words and just being delivered to your face. Like what what an incredible evolution. And the way that we just operate, the way that we can interact with the world around us, right? Like you could just like know things quickly, right? And people expect you to be able to know things. This is becoming like a basic skill within our society, right?
It's part of our language, as in like just the phrase like Google it. That was not a thing 25 years ago, and like that became a phrase like because Google was like for me back in the day, like Yahoo was a search engine, Ask Jeeves was a search engine, Alta Vista was a search engine, but it became Google it.
But like even further than that, like with like Google Maps, right? To be able to just like navigate to like wherever, like someone could just like give you an address. Like before, when they gave you an address, like they had to give you directions to that address, right? Like we'll wait till Greg gets back on. Greg, we're just talking about like how agreeing with what you were saying before, how our lives are so much different now, right? Just talking about like how to get from point A to point B, right? Like Dr. Greg, you got let's say you got family coming over, right? They never been to your house before, right? What do? You send them your address, and then that's it, right?
MapQuest questions, and then you're like, how remember that?
yeah. People used to have to print out
The
papers.
printouts,
right?
the printouts of the
Or Thomas guide, dude. When I started driving, it was Thomas guides. You had to do the grids, and you had to figure out like where you were. And
Yeah. It's like, but today people send you an address and they just expect you to navigate your way there. When before, like people like within the lifetimes of like people who are alive today, right? Like before when you did that, you had to like give out like detailed instructions, right? Like, hey, like look out for this restaurant, take it right here, right? Like and there's like McCaffrey Street, but like three blocks down from McCaffrey Street. Remember, the street's like super small, so you might not notice it. If you drive too far, right? If you see the KFC, you've gone too far, right? You gotta turn around, right? That's how we used to do it. And like it's just like taken for granted these incredibly powerful tools that we have now, right? And it just changes our way that we interact with each other. Right, like, hey, I want to go on a date with a girl, right? Theoretically, one day, right? But like, we'll both find the restaurant and I can just expect you to show up there and like be there. I don't have to like coordinate that with you. Like, because you should be able to just navigate your way through a complex, even if you've never been in that city before, even that's your first day in the city.
Yeah.
You should be able to navigate your way to anywhere that I tell you to. That's incredible.
Dude, or even DoorDash, the fact that you can like just order anything from your food. Like I remember it was like, I mean, that was like a crazy thing just to have like pizza delivery. That was like
call up the actual restaurant, as in like Domino's Pizza, not just like.
I will say, hey, the biggest innovation ever was Slash Pizza in EverQuest, and you could actually pull up Pizza Hut from you could have Pizza Hut delivery from in game. All right, I've never seen that actually replicated, but EverQuest was doing it, was ahead of its time, I guess. But yeah, now that you can get anything delivered, it's just wild, man. It's cool. I think that we have a lot of like amenities nowadays that we take for granted and stuff. A lot of societal like progress. If you like flowers being they're legal now for all that stuff. And I never would have thought that would be legal. That was like the big thing, like, oh, the pharmaceutical companies are always going to keep flower illegal, and and then boom, now it's legal, and so it's just I think that's just awesome.
Slowly catching up to Canada.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the other thing I was going to touch on, and I wrote it down so I didn't forget, right, was what you were talking about, Dr. Greg, which I thought was like really important about the infrastructure that China is building in terms of like, the power grid, expanding that, but also we can talk about like, their high speed rail everywhere.
Tens of thousands
and
of miles.
What do you say?
They have tens of thousands of miles.
Yes. Oh, yeah. It's
in terms of miles built, like China's like number one, well, by a mile, as in like they're in like the tens of thousands, and like countries like the U.S. is like they have like a few kilometers, like maybe 100 miles, or something like that.
Zero in the U.S. We have zero high speed rail like in the U.S. right now.
It's humiliating. But like, I think like, and everyone does this. I think everyone does this because like, when a piece of infrastructure is built, right? Like it's a huge effort to do it at the time, and it can be like politically fraught, and just like there's a lot that goes into it, right? But once it's there, right? A building is a building, right? And it's like there's something you just take advantage. Well, the building, of course, the building's built, the building will stay up, building will be there, and we can extract value from that building. But like infrastructure compounds in value, right? Like just to shrink it down, like imagine like an auditorium, right? Like, hey, we're gonna like pull together the town's money to build up this auditorium type thing, right? This public auditorium. And like, what do you do with the public auditorium while it's after it's built, right? Well, you know what? I guess you can, do shows, right? You can like, like have the arts there, right? And you can have like shows that are done in town, but also, right, now that this auditorium built, well, like traveling, like play companies, right, like they can come in and do shows into your town, right? And that's the thing, But then all of a sudden, we can also do it for comedy, right? We can do a whole bunch of things with this, and it attracts attention, it attracts money into our community, and it does that across 50, 70 years, this thing. But then other things happen. It opens up other opportunities, right? Like, hey, I'm a presidential I'm working for a presidential candidate, right? And I'm trying to like come up with places where we can do a rally. Okay, we're gonna do a rally. We're gonna go across the state, and we're looking for suitable spots. Oh, look at this town has this like auditorium, right? We could use this for our rally. All of a sudden, now you're having a rally there, and you're interacting with the candidate. Where otherwise that would happen 2 towns over because they have that infrastructure, and you don't, right? Because you never built that auditorium, right? You even the people, right? Like your kids who get like to access that auditorium in your town, well, maybe one of them gets inspired to like go into the arts, right? Like, because plays happen there all the time, like because I got to experience that as a child. Now that like changes my life direction. Like all these things compound, right? And so if you expand that to what China is doing in terms of like building out rail and like having this expanded power, right? This output, you can do businesses that weren't possible otherwise, right? If you can get cargo cheaply from one side of the nation to another side, right? Like faster than we can in other countries. Well, that cheapens the cost, and it might make some businesses possible that just aren't possible otherwise, aren't like financially viable, right? Or if you have enough power, right? Because what we're seeing now in AI, right, is that like they're running out of power. They don't know, like they want to plug in for this like AI infrastructure, but literally like there's just not enough power to draw from the grid. But if you have excess power, my understanding, I haven't looked into this, right? But my understanding is that that China is building up data centers, but they got like a ton of extra power. They have so much power they don't know what to do with, right?
Solar, wind, nuclear.
Yeah, that makes business models, emerging business models like this, right, possible and easy to do, where it's a struggle here in the US, right? Exactly. Infrastructure compounds over time and in ways that you can't imagine when you even first build it. But if you don't build it, then by the time you need it, you're already behind.
Absolutely. Real quick, we got 2 vaccines for Mike G in the chat. Thank you so much. But 3, 2, 1. Nice. Good job. Good job. No, you're exactly right, man. Building that infrastructure, it facilitates. It's a reason why like there's hubs of technology, that happens, like in the United States, San Diego, San Francisco, some parts of
the research triangle in like Virginia or something.
Exactly. North Carolina and the MIT, Broad, Harvard. What happens is that like you have companies that work together and are synergistically. So like, for example, the biotechnology hub in San Diego, I can speak to because like as a molecular biologist, I need primers, which are nucleotides that are specifically printed to the thing that I need. And I, because there's IDT, which is a company that synthesizes those, I can get, they can do same day shipping. They can do, I can order a primer at 10 p.m. and then at 10 a.m. the next morning, it could be that primer is on my lab bench, which means that my thing is doing my experiment, because biology takes multiple days for my experiment. That means having that there means that my experiment not just goes 12 hours faster, but sometimes a full week faster, because now I can do it before the weekend. Like there's huge implications here. And then on top of that, the instruments that I'm using need to be maintained. So that's someone's job that needs to come maintain it. Our hoods need to be certified. Someone needs to make our instruments, and then they make our instruments, and then they send out field technicians in order to fix them. Like, so that's why these companies all kind of like, they all are created together. So that's what a hub is. And that's why, that's why governments facilitate that through economic development of startup hubs and all that kind of stuff, because it's like, it really behooves multiple industries at the same time. And, that is like the impetus in order to get that going. I mean, that you really want a government to do that, because it basically creates the funds and because they're normally around universities, right? So universities are spinning out these companies through startups and that kind of stuff, and so they need to be putting that money in. But that's also our federal fund money, right? That's going through their NSF grants. And but I guess my broader point is that, like, when we have Trump slashing NIH and NSF grants by 30%, that's less. That's not just woke DEI programs where it's like we're not studying, like, social, structural racism, for example. This is, private companies now that are being impacted, that are doing their services to these public universities, and it's like it's bigger than that. So it funds the entire ecosystem.
I agree. That's why I'm very curious to see how it's going to play out. I suspect I know how it's going to play out in terms of, again, pretty much just these institutions pretty much further falling behind countries like China, and pretty much the U.S. no longer being the technological leader in the world. Now, there's the argument made that whether the U.S. should, as in to I think Prime's point earlier, like he's not xenophobic or xenophobic, as in there's nothing inherently wrong, but I do find I would assume that, since it's the MAGA movement, Make America Great Again, I would assume part of that greatness is being a technological leader, but maybe it's not. I don't know. Maybe being greatness another way.
I don't think it has anything to do with that. I mean, every single MAGA that's coming here that I told that I got laid off because of Trump thinks that I'm a woke libtard. That's they're happy that my job has been lost. So I don't see that. That's the problem, is that it's like, when it comes down to American jobs, they're okay with Americans losing their job as long as they don't agree with it. So that's the frustrating and wild part.
But
of it.
like, it's even more than that. And again, I think it's what we've all been like talking about here, and we've been saying in different ways, right? Like, it's like, do they want, if you ask these individuals, do they want America to be a leader in innovation, right? There's not I can't imagine there's a person wearing a MAGA hat who would ever say no, right? To that. But what does that look like? Like, how do you make that happen, right? Well, we invest in the companies that are going to like push us forward, right? One, there's an assumption that like most of most of the advancement comes from a corporation, right? When it's that those corporations are, like, for instance, the iPhone, this is a perfect example of this, right? The iPhone is a collection of patents and technology that were developed in universities, right? Previously, right?
Yeah,
and then they put them all together, and they deserve credit for that, right? Apple, right? So they absolutely deserve credit for, like, making this a big breakthrough. But that was on the back of all these other innovations, the research of decades that created that thing, right? It wasn't just like Steve Jobs, like in the lab. He wasn't even an engineer. Like he wasn't in the lab. He's like, you know what? I got this, right? Like, let me, like, give me a night, boys, right? Let me slap this thing together, right? That's not what happened, right? But again, from a great man, the great man history's perspective, that's what it looks like happened from the outside, right? Hey, do we all know the names of all the other people, the engineers who worked on the iPhone, right? And do we know the names of the researchers who created the technologies that those patents were based off of? We don't know any of those people, right? Those people are invisible. But they were all crucial to that step. So again, when you're asking them, what does that innovation look like, right? Well, then we're gonna use it, right, to like create like futuristic stuff, right? Some company, right, is just going to create it, and then America will then have something better without understanding like all the scientific infrastructure behind all of these inventions that make them all possible, like that give you the end product, right? So they don't even know that, like, research, just like infrastructure, research is another type, is a scientific infrastructure, right? That compounds, like we've been saying the entire night. It compounds. You start that like a decade ago, right? You're investing in a person like Corey, right? And a person like Dr. Greg. They're putting in research, and they don't know where it's going to go, right? They got a hypothesis. They're going to mess around with it, right? They make a discovery that becomes a research paper. Someone else looks at that research paper in the future and like, wait a minute, that might have something that might have a a use for the problem that I'm working on right now. And that thing becomes a breakthrough technology where billions are made from. That's how
Yeah.
it works.
Yeah,
And
go ahead.
I just want to expand on that point, and sort of even bring up sort of the example of what you talked about, of like just some people, unfortunately, like, and it's not their fault, but yeah, they don't know where. So, and in a similar vein to what you said about the iPhone, okay, the example that I like to use, because like this is more of my area of expertise, or like when I know more about it in terms of development, of like I would say virtually every pharmaceutical drug, okay, that's on the market, you could trace its origins to an academic research institution. And yeah, a lot of people assume that, you like the pharmaceutical companies are actually coming up with these drugs. No, they're largely running the clinical trials, as sort of an example where, I don't know if you recall a panel that you had a few months ago, Prime, that included Rob Noor. And Rob Noor, he was saying like, yeah, like defund these, or pretty much the overall message was like, defund these universities. And I was pushing back like, well, how are you going to, like, I'm assuming you want to cure cancer. And he was saying, well, why not just fund the American Cancer Society? Okay. And I'm like, do you think the American Cancer Society has labs? What do you think the American Cancer Society? This was on the panel. Because like, if you go to the American Cancer Society, what do? They get money, they have donors, but then they go and fund research at research institutions. Yeah. And so he just and I asked him, like, do you think the American Cancer, and he seemed to be under the impression that the American Cancer Society is running labs. Like, there's the American Cancer Society lab.
I mean, and a lot, the problem is like the Republican answer to all this stuff is like tax cuts. If you tax people less, people would personally just spend 30% of their money towards personal loans or investments into these
business. Yeah, that business will come up with a,
just like they would fill that gap, they would personally direct it. So it's embarrassing, but my where like we are going to push it. My friends at the Department of Energy and stuff, where we're going to be pushing our money or pools of money right now as the United States. And it's like, basically, if the projects that are going to be funded in the future are basically kind of like anything AI and defense related. So those are the two pushes that we're going to be funding as a country. So that's it. Like our economy is based on AI right now because of the Mag 7 company. Like 30% of the S&P 500 is basically 7 companies, and that's all funded and investments all through AI. Which is
just small thinking. It's just like small, like short-term thinking, right? Like, I'm not saying not invest in AI, not as much as we are, right? Maybe we're a little too much now, right? But like, I'm not saying not invest in AI. I think AI has lots of uses, maybe not quite as much as we've been sold, but a lot of uses. But like that's the technology of today, right? Was the technology of tomorrow? What is that next breakthrough? We don't know. We can't possibly know what it is. Unfortunately, if we did, well, I would be monetizing it right now, right? Yeah. And then I'd be that billionaire. You'd have to do what I say. But no. But yeah, we have no idea like what that is, right? It starts with, like, again, funding a person like Corey, funding a person like Dr. Greg, right? And others like them. And putting them in positions where they can, like, express their scientific curiosity, right? And then write a paper that's going to go on a shelf, right? That's going to be stuck in some sort of like academic journal for a number of years until some other innovator, right, comes across it and then like maybe uses that, and then a bunch of other research done, combine that into something truly innovative, and that becomes a platform. Just like AI is becoming a platform for further work, right? Whatever that new thing is will come a platform for like new businesses, for new research, and for new products, and maybe like helping make your life just a little bit easier. But it starts now.
Yeah, that's my hope. My research, for example, my algae nanotechnology stuff isn't like widely cited or anything right now, but I hope so. I mean, I kind of like help pioneer that field, and so maybe someone in the future is looking for algae biofuels, and then they go and find my paper and they use it as a delivery vessel to change the game. I mean, that's my hope at least. But so hopefully I see that. Hopefully it. I don't know. That'd be cool, but or it was a dud paper and it was bad research, and it dies in the annals of research history. Who knows? So, but at the same time, it's like it was cool because seeing that area, going to a plant nanotechnology lab and then bringing algae to that, I kind of like saw, there was 0 algae nanotechnology projects that were funded when I got there. And then when I left, we had about like 6 or 7 projects from the Department of Energy and stuff. So it's like, just me bringing my molecular biology experience to that lab was, allowed kind of like what you're talking about, Prime, where it's like, okay, the buzzword is called interdisciplinary research, where you're kind of like, oh, this is something cool. This is something that's cool. Have we explored this interstitial place between these 2 areas? We haven't. Okay, let's see what's going on here. And it's just like curiosity and hypothesis driven research that you don't know what's going to happen, but you kind of have a cool tool. You want to see what it does, or you want to see what it allows us to do now. And then you just kind of like, peer through that window, and that's how it happens. That's how it happens.
Yeah.
But I do and I think like Ruben said something in my chat, which was really true. He was talking about how Canada is like opening this week. There was announced about the new trade agreement between Canada and China.
That's big news.
This is huge news, guys. This is exactly what we all knew was going to happen, where it's like the trade is still going to happen, right? Global capitalism still exists. It's just going to route itself around the United States as opposed to through it. And now they're going to have more and more cars. Because, by the way, guys, you should look at MKBHD has a good video about this. Like, the most advanced cars in the world right now are in China. They're insanely cheap, and we literally banned their imports because we can't compete.
They would crush us. Yeah. They would crush the American automotive industry.
Like, for $30,000, you're getting an incredible car that's just insanely amazing. So they banned those, and so Canada.
Well, exactly. Like, so that's what. So I believe it's a 100% tariff, although maybe it was, but like that's where
that's what
Canada.
It was.
Yeah, but Canada also essentially followed in the footsteps of the United States. Of like, okay, Canada up until pretty much the past couple of days, we had a 100% tariff on electric vehicles coming from China. But I believe now they've reduced them. They still, I believe they're like they're implementing a quota, as in we can only have so many X amount of Chinese electric vehicles like per year. Last I read, but that is a huge change. And if that quota, gets revised, or like pretty much like if it gets to the point of like pretty much any Chinese electric vehicle can be made available in Canada, I'm curious what's going to happen. Of like, you have Chinese electric vehicles like in Canada, they're taking over, and then I believe Chinese electric vehicles are pretty big in South America. It's like the United States is just going to be isolated in their vehicle.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is, you can't. You can't isolate yourself scientifically and through engineering. Like that is the problem, and that is like that is a genuine thing with like free trade and the internet. It's like, by opening yourself up to other technologies and stuff, you do allow and foster more like innovation within it. And you're either a player on that global scale or you're watching it happen. That's just how it's going to happen.
So, like, what's interesting is, and this is like a larger conversation, maybe for some other time, but like, America keeps creating its own Chinese rivals, specifically China. Every time we try to stifle them, like America, like the Chinese rivals of today, like were created by American companies, right, or American decision making from yesterday. So, like, for instance, with the cars, right? Well, China basically used American capitalist greed against itself, right? So China is biggest strength is like its massive market, right? And with a increasingly rich, like well-to-do, like middle class, right? Like American capitalists saw dollar signs. And they went to get into that market, right? And so like this is decades ago. They like, okay, we want to start selling. China gives a stipulation. Well, we'd love to have you.
You got to build here.
But no, it's even worse than that, right? But you have to have a Chinese company sponsor you, right? So a Chinese company, when they sponsor you, what that means is like they partner with you, but with that partnership comes the technology transfer. They got to see what you're doing, right? They got to have all insights into like whatever it is like is happening there. And so what they did was like all these companies, anyone that moved in, like Ford, to Tesla, to name the American company that sold there, they all like gave their technology to these Chinese companies. These Chinese companies are making their own cars, right? Mostly they were pretty shitty, right? Like they tried to imitate, and mostly kept really shitty, but they kept iterating, right? And this was backed by government money, government guarantees. Right, we're going to give you the space to like fail a bunch of times, but then hopefully for you to get to a better product. And that's what they kept doing until they actually achieved that. Until they have those cars that Corey was talking about, that and Greg was talking about, like the most innovative cars in the world are coming out of China. That was American technology freely given over to them to access that market, right? And so American car companies were dominating the automotive market, right, for decades. They dominated their market, but now these Chinese companies have caught up, right, and seemingly surpassed them. Like the American, there's a shrinking market. So that's what I was referring to before. Tesla had a huge chunk of the Chinese automotive market, but in recent years, that's been rapidly shrinking because of the competition they helped create. And so and now we're terrified of those cars coming into our country, right? Because then they're gonna come in and they're gonna finish Ford and Tesla off, right? If they come into America and start selling their cars like crazy, they'll finish us off, and we create that enemy. And it's not the only example of this happening, right? Well, first of all, this technology transfer thing, that happens for pretty much any corporation that wants to do business in China, right? So that's the thing. But also because of like what Trump is doing right now, and Biden as well, right? This has been going on for a little bit. Where they've been banning China from like getting like technology from the US, right? They were banning China from like Android, right? They wouldn't let Android be sold there anymore. And so what did they do, right? When they were happy to use American technology, they created their own operating system. They limited Microsoft. They created their own operating system there. Where these companies, it's just easier for any company anywhere in the world to just do what it was doing before. So if they were using Microsoft technology, even if there's like friction between the countries, right, that makes it a little difficult, they'll just keep doing it. They'll like whatever, right? It's fine. But when you cut them off, they're like, well, then we have to change, right? They're changing to a Chinese alternative. It's small now. Let's wait a decade. What does that look like? The chips, right? They've cut them off from like the American chip making, right? What are they doing? And I've seen them working at this, right? They're like, and they've also cut them off from like there's this like I think it's a Swedish company, if I'm not mistaken, but there's a Swedish company. There's like only one company in the world that's making these chip fabrication machines. These like ultraviolet like chip fabric. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah,
Like,
the lithography. I believe
lithography.
it's a Dutch or from the Netherlands. The ASML company.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, all white people look the same.
Incredible.
But they
incredible.
Yeah, but anyway, like this technology, this like the only ones who can make it. All that has been embargoed, right, from China. China can't access this. So what are they doing? They're like reverse engineering the technology right now. They're like they're like super smart. Like these machines exist around the world. Like they're hard to find, but they exist, right? And they're like looking for like old machines and like spare parts of those machines, and they're like slowly like Frankensteining like like a version of the machine in China, and then like figuring out how to reverse engineer it, when otherwise they would have just bought it, right? They would have bought it from a Western company, they would have bought the chips from us. They're going to create their own chip factories, and then they're going to outcompete us. We keep making our own rivals. It keeps happening.
Yeah, and to further, I'll just quickly to further add on to your example. I don't know if you remember. I think it was around 4 or 5 years ago, or 6. Like pretty much not only the U.S. but pretty much in large portions of the world, Huawei was banned. Their technology. I have a Huawei cell phone. And like I don't use it anymore. But at the time, like I bought the Huawei cell phone before it was banned. Then it was banned, and like my use of that cell phone became severely limited. All pretty much like you said with the Android ban and all that stuff. And for a while, for a number of years, it did sort of it set back Huawei a lot. But if you look at like they're pretty much like back to where they were, and like they're just like pushing like even further because they were forced to do something different. Because like the Chinese, well, one, it's a big population, but if I have my numbers correct, last I looked, like as of now, like they're the most educated population in the world in terms of like number of PhDs and advanced education, because it's like, and there's the issue of like there's a employment issue in the United States in terms of we can't get enough, advanced educated people in the United States, as opposed to it's flipped in China, as in they have a huge youth unemployment problem. Yeah. As in we have too many people with PhDs and masters. But if you want to create work for them, like, okay, let's reverse engineer this lithography technology. Like they have people that are like desperate to use their technical skills, as opposed to in the United States, they are desperate for the people that have the technical skills.
Yeah, and Taiwan, like TSMC is like a huge manufacturer and for like a lot of memory and stuff that are used in these things in China. It wants to take China is very let's just say like very free spirited in how they understand what IP rights are. So they just kind of like will take it.
Yeah.
But like, genuinely, like I think that it spurs innovation and it spurs like people to like innovate, and keep pushing, so again, like you can't block them forever. It's never going to be a thing. We got really lucky.
We tried to block them for AI, and they created DeepSeek that that sent an earthquake through the industry.
Yeah, I mean they did. They were basically getting backdoored NVIDIA GPUs and stuff when they were blocked from that. But they're obviously that it was found out that DeepSeek was trained on the NVIDIA chips that they weren't supposed to be getting. After all, they couldn't. So,
but they're still trying to engineer their own chips. So like I think there's now even
they tried every Samsung's failed. All these other companies and countries have tried. It is really remarkable, the technology. Veritasium has an incredible video. It's an hour-long video going into all the engineering that's into like making these chips. It really is incredible. But I don't know how long that it's just like a technical limitation. So we're going to see it again in our life. We're probably going to see it again with like quantum computing. We're going to see this again happening with fusion technology if we ever get that there. So if it's just you're always going to have that. There's always going to be something else. Like you have to not play a defensive game on technology. It has to be offensive. You have to be constantly innovating. That's like the only way in order to do it. If you sit on your laurels, you're going to get scooped. You're just going to get scooped.
I think the part of the problem is like, and I'm like just like thinking about this right now, is like this idea of like American ingenuity and what that looks like, what the average person thinks that looks like, right? That like there is something about the American, this is like the mythos, right? That it's built up. There's something about the American worker, the American spirit, right? That can just like accomplish these big projects, right? Like, I mean, we went to the moon, right? Like we just put our minds to it. Like we can like make these things happen without the slightest bit of understanding of like how much work and how much infrastructure, how much policy, like what kind of policy went behind all those big moments, right? Like those, like, because especially since we're so disconnected as to like what our government does, right? We don't see like the outcomes of like actions previously, right? We don't tie these two things together, right? We see the outcome and then we imagine, right, the action that created. And you know what it was? It was just like a good old American gumption, right? That made that. But with that, but once you think Americans are exceptional, well, then it makes sense. Hey, if we just like block these guys from getting access to these things, well, then they can't do what we did. Of course not. They don't have the American spirit, right? They're the Chinese, right? They'll try their best to like flop around, but in the end, anything they create will be inherently inferior to what we create, right? And it may not like be like a racist mindset behind that or anything like that, right? But it's just that like, hey, we are just like so great at this. We had a history of being so good at this. So that means we'll always be that good, right? No matter what policies we institute, no matter what grants we start denying, like no matter what our attitude is to universities, right? Which are the engines of all these things, right? No matter what, none of that matters. That's all like fluff. No, it's American ingenuity. Just like our can-do spirit will put these things. The Chinese are proving no, like we can do this, right? Like we got a bunch of great minds, we got a bunch of hungry individuals, right? We spent decades educating these individuals, and now they're seeing the fruits of their labors, right? Yeah. And this is going to change the future. I think within our lifetimes. The way like China will interact with us, right? China's going to be a hub. The way Japan was like a big hub for a while, right? Japan was a big hub for technology, for like in the leader, honestly, for a bit, right? China's going to become that. China's going to be leading the world, and by that time, I'm telling you, it's too late. It's like way too late.
It's true. I mean, the United States becoming the financial hub, of the world was tied with the two world wars, but then the technology innovation that was, why the United States was such a leader for so long, it's immigration. It really is. It's directly tied to immigrants. It's
those people we're harassing right now. I mean, those people.
Yeah, exactly. It really is. It's the, for example, the Manhattan Project is physicists that were, immigrants after they fled World War II. It's that's directly tied with the nuclear program, which is directly tied with the silicone chip being developed in the United States, which is directly tied within GPS and all these other things that happened. And why is it tied? Why does immigration lead to scientific breakthroughs? It's because, like, in order to have breakthroughs and truly revolutionary ideas in science, you have to have people are going down a path, right, in a field. So it takes a different approach sometimes, a different way of thinking about a problem. That's like, hey, what if, okay, so as a biological organism, when we're trying to figure this out, and we're a bunch of biologists, like, what if we thought about organisms as physics problems instead? So this is, for example, why one of the early pioneers of the synthetic biology as a field was a physicist. This is someone that actually came through and was like, let's try to think and take the biological black box out and just try to think of this as a physics problem. And
then science immigrant.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, that exactly. And he's thinking like, okay, let's remove that biological black box. Let's think of it as an if else statement, like as if we were going to code an organism.
Yeah, code it. Yeah.
And now we're going to look at that. How do we program circuitry into DNA? And it's like, well,
wow.
So that's what happens. That's what the synthetic biology is. So it's like, it's a different approach. It's interdisciplinary science, like we were talking about before, adding two different things, thinking about different approaches, and that is those different approaches come from people that are from different backgrounds, different education backgrounds, different ways of approaching problems,
different schools of thoughts. Yeah.
Exactly. And the idea is that you want to bring people from all those different, backgrounds into one space, and then now they're all working in cooperatively in order to solve a problem together. And then that's where you get these innovation hubs, and then you put them in a similar area, like in San Diego or something, where everyone's working on.
They synergize.
Exactly. And then now you got a real, like, something's in the air, man. Now you feel like you're actually into something.
Yeah. So just to expand on that just a little bit, put a pin on it, or maybe as an so this aspect of interdisciplinary. So I consider myself a scientist, and definitely Greg is a scientist. And even though we're both scientists and our backgrounds are more similar, but what I can say, at least in my experience, is like, given my background in biology, the way I'm trained to think, and the way that I approach problems, in my experience, is different than how the chemists that I've interacted with, that they approach things or how they solve problems. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but in my experience, they clearly have a different viewpoint, and how they tackle problems than I do. And sometimes my solutions work better, but sometimes their solutions work better. But that's what it's all about in terms of like those diverse backgrounds.
Exactly. And if you're in a project together and you have different approaches, you can literally have, like, in a company, right? You literally have competing ideas, and you're like, let's see who wins. Like, let's see who solves this problem first. Let's see who can actually give the best solution. So you'll be literally trying to, like, both work on a solution together, and it's like, and you're trying to see, like, what actually wins. That's actually honestly the best thing about working at a biotechnology company, is because there's a mechanism in order to settle these quarrels that you have with your coworker, where you can like, all right, who's gonna, let's look at the figure, and like, let's see who actually has the p-value to say this, that wins. So it's you're in direct competition in a good way in order to make better. And it's fun. It's you're innovating, and then also you're improving your company's product. You're understanding the mechanism better because you're like toying with it a little bit more. And I mean, it's just, there's so many benefits from it.
I mean, I can go on about this, and how, like, we are discouraging immigrants. Like, I mean, so there's like the poor immigrants, which is the ones we're like concentrating on harassing right now, right, and immiserating and beating and sending them off, right? Even though we never stop getting stories of like, hey, this is the son or daughter of a poor immigrant who started a business, right, that went on to like do yada yada yada, right, and become like a pillar of American society. That story keeps repeating itself, but still, those are people being targeted right now. Okay.
So many people, first generations that are incredible scientific researchers and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there's countless.
But there's that, but there's also, and I'll leave it here. I think I'll have to head out after this. But like, there's also the good immigrant, right? The good type of immigrant that would be on currently people from Southeast Asia, who are coming into our research facilities, or our universities, and like they're being educated, and then we aren't providing them visas and pathways where they can work and stay here, right?
Yeah,
we're making
pathway,
and we're making them so difficult. And then the screw that H-1B visa, right? Screw that. I don't want more of those things, right? Not because I don't want more of these individuals. I absolutely do want more. I actually really want to expand the pathways for citizenship, right? But those H-1 visas, right, A and B, they are basically like indentured servitude, right? Like you get sponsored by a corporation, right? Let's say, I don't know, let's say Tesla, right? You get sponsored by a corporation like that, and then you have to work for that corporation. The visa doesn't actually lie with you; it lies with the corporation, right? And so if the corporation gets tired of you, they can get rid of you very quickly. And so, this H-1 visa is just so scummy on so many different levels that people don't even freaking realize. Like they pay the price for these visas. There's only a certain number of those. It's like super high, and so only big companies, right, large corporations can pay for these visas, right? So small and medium players are locked out of it, right? These like great minds that we keep saying we want from all those other countries, right? like small hungry players can't even access them, so they're out of the question, right? And then how it's set up is like, hey, you got to make sure that no American can fill that job first, right? You want to know how they check to see if no American can fill out that job? They'll put up a posting for the job, right? For some specialized thing, right? Something like a Corey could do, right? But like a Corey would come with a reasonable price, right? Well, they can put up that job posting for half that, right? And a person, a Corey stash is like, oh, I'm not gonna take this, right? And so no one applies, and no Americans want it. No Americans can fill it. And so now we have to hire someone else from outside the country, right? And what we'll do is we'll hire them for less, right? We'll hire them for less because they're hungry to get in here, right? And they'll do anything. So they'll hire them for less. And now, because they're such a precarious position, what we never have to worry about is them unionizing or them causing trouble. They'll do exactly what we tell them to do. So you have a cheaper force, an educated, cheaper labor force that is easily controllable. That's what that H-1B visa is, right? That's why those capitalists, those billionaires keep fighting for it, right? They don't give a damn about immigration. They want a more controllable labor force, right? There are people within America that can actually fill a lot of those roles. They don't want them. They literally don't want them. Instead, they'll go through these programs, right? So what I would do, I would attach the visa to the worker. The worker then can come into the country and they can compete in the marketplace, right? And the marketplace can compete for them. If they're so great, well, then they should be paid the requisite amount. And if you abuse them, then they should have the ability to walk away like any other worker. They should be able to do exactly that, right? And then we'll see actually, right, where the Americans can compete with them, because Americans aren't competing from a level playing field. That's the problem.
Yeah, I think like serving the country, like we narrowly think of it only as armed services, and I think more broadly, genuinely, like I think that public health workers are serving the country. I think scientists are serving the country, engineers are serving the country, like people that are giving back to like the broader good, helping solve these problems, to establish us. I think that it's like a lot greater of a pool, and I think that these people that are coming in, that are immigrants, they should be those years that they are working as a postdoc or as a researcher or as a scientist or whatever, those are years that they should be seen as serving the country, and like they should be able to turn those years into like years served and citizenship afterwards.
Towards citizenship. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We want them. We desperately need them here because they're literally world experts by definition in their field and what they're doing. They are world experts, so we would be so much better to have them here versus competing against them anywhere else. They're going to be basically taken to whatever country that they want, and they're, like I was saying earlier, they're going to be given apartments, cars, labs, companies, whatever.
Other countries understand their worth.
They're scalping them as much as they can. So we need to do whatever we can in order to keep them here. So I think offering them citizenship is the least that we can do.
I love what you just said, because I think it speaks to the conservative mindset, right? Me, I just like throw up in the immigration doors. I just accept a lot more people in general. But from a conservative mindset, who's like more skeptical, like thinking like, they've got to earn their way in when you just were born. You just came out of a woman's vagina and that's how you got here, or whatever. But these people who have to earn their way in, like, well, what if they were here, they were actually doing research, and we thought of that like as serving the country, right? Adding value to the country. It's like, well, they spent all this time doing like research here. Yeah, that is credit that goes to like making earning like a green card, right? I really like that. I think that would like really work. Like if we could push that into conservative circles, I think that's something they could actually latch on to. So I don't know.
Nice. Yeah. I think I also like working at public service at city halls or something like that too, or government workers. I think that's like that's in there too. Like I think about, government at any level, honestly, city, state, or national. But it's a lot that I think that we just don't have enough. Our civic pride is so weird in the United States. So it's either gone or misplaced, and patriotism is something that we like run away from on the left, as opposed to like embracing the best values that I think that we want to espouse and lift up. And we should like take the mantle of patriotism away from these people that just want to beat our heads over the the forehead with a flagpole. And literally in January 6th.
Yeah. Absolutely. But yeah, I guess I'll wrap it there. But this was a really good conversation. I enjoyed it a lot.
No. Yeah. I think not enough Elon bashing, but we can always do that again next week.
Yeah. But I liked being able to examine your backgrounds, right? Like, because you guys had so much to add to this, because like this is your life that you've lived, right? And so like teasing that out and hearing your opinions on all of these and like the state of scientific research currently, and what it's like working your way through the university system and different pressures that lead you to make the decisions that you do, right? All that's like super fascinating. I don't think enough people hear that and really understand what that looks like, and like the incentive structures and the outcomes that creates, right? And because of that, again, a lot of conspiracy theories and misunderstandings of happen, which leaves rooms for like complete like charlatans like Elon Musk, like RFK Jr., like Donald Trump, frankly, like honestly, like the entire like modern conservative movement and their understanding of the Ivory Tower, right? Like that happens because like there isn't a lot of insight into this world. It's a problem.
I agree, and a lot of it falls on people like us, or let's say I'll take the blame. I have no problem. It's all my fault because I do think scientists and academics should be more transparent and should want to share their stories and their experience with academia, as opposed to like hiding in their offices or just hiding in their labs. Obviously, I want them doing the work, but also ideally, I want the public to know what they're doing and have an understanding of why their work is important.
Yeah. Exactly. Guys, before they do their outros, I want you to, if you can hear my voice, come to the phone, or you're doing dishes or something, check and see if you've followed Prime and Corey. Please follow them right now. Prime is 20 followers away from being able to do debates and stuff and host lives on this platform. Please, they've given so much time and awesome discussions here. Please do them the favor of just checking to see if you follow Prime and Corey and give them a follow. Please, please, please. I really, really appreciate it. They deserve it. TikTok deserves it. Okay.
Very kind. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, really kind of you. Also, come find me on Twitch, YouTube, or kick.com /PrimeKais, PrimeCayes. We have debates and a lot of fun. A lot of yelling. This was just a conversation. This was a discussion, right? Debates are much more chaotic, but they're a lot of fun. And so just follow me, right? Thank you. I didn't get to see your name. Is it overused True Toy? Thank you for the follow. On Twitch, much appreciated. But yeah, I would appreciate you come through.
How do you follow him? He's in the box right here. They're in the guest box right here. So if you just the regular the guest box, I
have the anime character avatar, right? So you can click on that. That'd be me.
You saying I can't be an anime character, Prime? I think
yeah.
And yeah, you can find me on Twitch, CoreyComedy4, Twitter, X, YouTube, Instagram, Substack, TikTok. It's Corey Campbell. Always a pleasure being here.
Yeah, and TikTok too. You can find me there. All right. Have a good one, everyone.
Until next week. Take care. Be well. Always a pleasure.